Two. Alpha, Michael, Foxtrot. 1, 2, 6, 8.
Thank you for coming in, Sydney. Next up, I'd like to call Kerry Baltramitis from the Blackstone Valley Regional Vocational Technical High School.
Good morning. My name is Kerry Baltramitis, and I come before you today as someone whose life has been shaped by vocational education. I am a graduate of Blackstone Valley Tech. I spent 17 years as a vocational teacher, 2 years as an assistant vocational director, and I am now in my 3rd year as the vocational director at Blackstone Valley Tech. I have dedicated my adult life to career and technical education because I know firsthand the opportunities it creates for students and families. Today, however, I'm here as a mother. My identical twin sons applied to Blackstone Valley Tech with the same hopes, same excitement, and same dream of attending the school that has meant so much to our family. They prepared together. They supported one another. They imagined beginning high school side by side. But because of the current lottery process, one son was admitted and the other was left out. I understand the purpose of the lottery. I understand the desire to create fairness and equal access, but when fairness becomes so rigid that it separates twins, we have to ask ourselves whether the system is truly serving students and families the way it was intended to. What makes this even harder to understand is that our public education systems already recognize the importance of keeping families together. Charter schools provide sibling preference, meaning when one child is admitted, siblings are given priority so families are not divided by the admissions process. In many communities, school employees may also access school choice options so their children can attend the district where they work. So I respectfully ask, if these accommodations exist elsewhere in public education, why is there no similar consideration for twins applying to vocational schools? Why is it considered fair in one setting to keep families together, but acceptable in another to separate twins? It just doesn't make any sense. These are not two unrelated applicants. These are brothers who've shared a home, a classroom journey, and a lifelong bond. Yet one now gets to walk through the doors of opportunity while the other watches from the outside. As a mother, I ask you to imagine the first day of school. Imagine one twin getting into the car with his mother, brother, and sister heading to the school they all dreamed of attending, while the others dropped off somewhere else, left to wonder why he was the one left behind. And yes, you heard me correctly when I said sister. My identical twins have an older sister that is a sophomore at Blackstone Valley Tech in the engineering trade and is thriving. That is not just an admissions outcome. This is an emotional hardship. This is a family hardship. I also should mention that both of my sons are currently on IEPs. The twin was not admitted, struggles with extreme anxiety. This decision will only compound the anxiety and fear. This decision has been crippling. My family's not alone. There are other twin families that have experienced the same result at BVT, and I'm sure other districts as well. The issue reaches beyond my own children. It highlights a gap in the policy that can and should be addressed compassionately. Allow districts limited discretion after seats are filled to make narrowly tailored accommodations in cases where twins or siblings are separated and capacity exists. Preserve fairness, but also preserve humanity. I can tell you that my district would make the consideration and let these twins in a heartbeat. Career and technical education is about preparing students for real life. Part of real life is understanding that policy must sometimes make room for compassion, common sense, and family well-being. I respectfully ask you today, please review this issue. Please consider families like mine. Please right the wrong immediately. As someone who has lived vocational education for 30 years, as a student, an educator, an administrator, and a parent, I know how powerful these schools can be. This is exactly why I'm fighting so hard for both of my sons to have that chance together. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Next up, I'd like to call, let me see, is Tracy Stewart here yet? Maybe not. Jenny H. Dunkley, JDK Communications and Special Education Consulting.
I'm an educational consultant and an advocate, and while I'm also a special education advisory panel representative, I feel forced today to speak as a private citizen because the avenue mandated for collaborative stakeholder group and advisory panel of parents, administrators, and agencies has been blocked. IDEA Section 300-169 states that advisory panels must advise the department on the unmet needs of children with disabilities, on the development of corrective plans and action plans reporting to OSEP and to the Secretary of Education, to comment publicly on any disability-related rules or regulations, and to advise in the developing and implementing of the coordination of services to the 21% of our children with disabilities. The Commonwealth has failed with every part of this federal mandate. Here's an overview. The panel is the only place where all stakeholders are supposed to be at the same table, listening, contributing, and advising the department as a whole, not as individuals. The division of advisory groups into a state council and federal panel was counterproductive. The council has not met at all this year. Neither group has submitted an annual report to you. The abdication of DESE's role to an out-of-state contractor has been a colossal waste of time and resources. It's led to 2 years of stagnation. Members have been denied the ability to get topics on our agenda, forcing us to raise issues as individuals during the public comment period of our own meetings, input that disappears into an abyss and never gets to you and never gets back to us. The bulk of our time has been spent on after-the-fact updates instead of before-the-fact gathering of insight, and on wordsmithing priorities rather than on acting on priorities. Advisory members have lost faith in the possibility of collaborative impact, leading to a woeful lack of attendance. Here are a few topics that weren't addressed in the panel comprised of many who sit in over 100 IEP meetings a year. These issues are connected and deserve more than 3 minutes each of your attention. The development of guidance, most recently the timeout practice regulations, admissions changes to vocational schools that won't have an impact on outcomes as long as vocational schools are allowed to provide only half of a FAPE. The annual Part B fund allocation application, our concerning SPP APR process, and the universal disappointment that the IEP Improvement Project made the form more cumbersome and redundant while neglecting to work on low and no-cost functional practice improvements. We're asking for DESE to adhere to the word and the intent of IDEA's mandate, to reunite the panel and the council as a working group, and to revert to member and DESE control of agendas and meetings. In the interim, please put us on your agenda. Better still, we're asking you to hold a special meeting after the completion of the OSEP audit to provide you with meaningful and functional input from the field. I thank you so much for your time.
Thank you very much. Next up, I'd like to call Elizabeth Tripathi from the Center for Education Policy and Practice on the topic of educator licensure.
Hi, good morning. I do have copies of a letter I shared with you by email last night as well. I can leave them, Helene.
Thanks.
Thank you so much, Helene. So hi, good morning. My name is Beth Tripathi. I'm with the Center for Education Policy and Practice at the Massachusetts Teachers Association. I'm also a member of the Educator Personnel Advisory Council here with the department. And I also served as a member of the External Advisory Group for the MTEL Alternatives over the past year. And I come today to ask for your support in approving the proposed amendments to the regulations to allow for the alternative pathways to the MTEL test, not only for the communication and literacy MTEL, but also to include the subject matter MTEL requirements. I've included our letter of support from the Mass Teachers Association, as well as some statements from members who shared with us just over the last few days in support of the subject matter knowledge alternatives. These amendments will allow candidates to reduce duplicative requirements, particularly for educators who come from out of state or hold international credentials. Did that cut? Oh, that's good. And to come in and to reduce the burdens and the repetitive testing that they experience when transferring into Massachusetts. It also recognizes the professional experience of educators, including those who've completed teacher preparation programs in Massachusetts, and gives them a pathway to just waive just one of the test requirements, or actually substitute one of the requirements with an equivalent or superior measure. One of the important pieces to having an option for either the communication and literacy or the subject matter MTEL requirements is for educators with disabilities who struggle with taking tests. There is an option to request accommodations for those educators when they take the test, but it is a timely and burdensome process. They need to request the accommodations each and every time they take the test and include medical documentation. For an adult to request documentation of a dyslexia or an ADHD diagnosis requires medical documentation that's recent. Anybody that's gone through that process, it's costly, time-consuming, and sometimes the only option available is extended time once that disability accommodation is available. So having that subject matter knowledge alternative can reduce that burden of having to repeat that accommodation request on every single time. Finally, as a member of the external advisory group, we were well aware that the subject matter knowledge portfolio options were not a final process. The recommendation was to have regulations to allow a portfolio and to define the eligibility criteria for that portfolio. It didn't set the final process. That would still need to be worked out. We are concerned that the delay in those regulations will slow that process and will discourage vendors from participating in that process moving forward. So if there's an opportunity to approve the full set of regulations as presented last month, to approve those today, or to expedite to get those moved forward so the portfolio development process can be in place, the sooner it's available, the sooner our candidates can take advantage of that option and complete their license requirements. I want to emphasize that this is not just for teachers in preparation programs. It is for our teachers who are working under emergency licenses, who are working under waivers, or who are looking to complete their preparation programs and they don't want to be delayed with graduation or be held up by program requirements. So thank you for your consideration of the regulations today, and I look forward to hearing more about how this is implemented.
Thank you. I'm going to call up Deb McCarthy next.
Good morning.
Morning.
The Massachusetts Teachers Association calls for the Board of Elementary and Secondary Education to vote to approve the proposed amendments to 603 CMR 7 that include the alternative paths for licensure for both the communications and literacy MTEL and the subject matter knowledge MTEL. The MTA opposes the current proposal to remove the regulations that will allow the department to offer alternative paths for the subject matter knowledge MTEL assessments. Approving these regulations is time sensitive. Hundreds of MTA members are currently working in schools under temporary licenses, emergency license, or waivers. Many of the impacted teachers have multiple years of successful employment in their district, where school administrators retain these skilled educators in the classroom. Many of the same teachers hold out-of-state or international credentials, are native speakers of multiple language, and or have had professional experience in their field prior to becoming a classroom educator. The teaching profession is currently experiencing its lowest level of employment in 50 years, and the number of prospective teachers earning a teacher's license is at an all-time low. At the start of the 2026 year, Massachusetts districts were reporting unfilled teaching positions at record levels in the Boston Public Schools, Springfield, Worcester, and Lawrence among the hardest hit. These losses have led to larger class sizes, overworked educators, and reduced program offerings in many districts. Vacancies are especially acute in high-need districts serving low-income and minority students, with rural districts facing higher vacancy rates relative to their size. The MTA is experiencing an uptick in the number of requests for support from members on the options for their teachers to ensure that they obtain full licensures before reduction in force or internal transfer processes begin. As we prepare our students for the global economy in the 21st century, we must recruit and retain a more diverse and representative workforce of educators, removing barriers around equity, diversity, and inclusion that deny our students the opportunities to see themselves and the educators in their classroom. Thank you.
Thank you, Deb. I was wondering if Tracy Stewart had arrived yet? Nope, okay. Jerry Morose, please.
Good morning.
Morning.
Today, you'll likely approve the regulations in education licensure to help create a more diverse teacher workforce. That's wonderful. Today, we also celebrate a wonderful teacher at a wonderful charter school who seeks to meet students where they are and inspires them too, while the school helps attend to their many varied non-academic needs. That's critical. Unfortunately, the accountability system that is supposed to incentivize all schools and teachers to act fails the students. These people do this kind of from the goodness of their heart. If your accountability system was more relevant, there wouldn't be any need to celebrate a wonderful individual teacher in school, because every individual teacher in school would be working at that level. Every week, I work with parents across the state representing children who encounter administrators and teachers who refuse to meet them where they are. These educator personnel, licensed by this department, don't respect even the statutes and regulations that they're supposed to operate under. They even reject the principles that are supposed to define their work. In IEP meetings especially, school personnel act as if their job is some sort of gatekeeper, tasked with denying access to a free and appropriate public education for students with disabilities. Some of this attitude flows from DESE, and as you've heard from other people, the special education template failed us. Chapter 69 intends that schools challenge all students to make appropriate progress within their zone of proximal development. Since the Supreme Court's 2017 decision in Andrew F. v. Douglas County, Colorado, it's been unambiguous that a school must offer for a student with a disability an IEP that's reasonably calculated to enable the child to make progress appropriate in light of the child's circumstances. Schools deny the child's circumstances. They have a one-size-fits-all for everything. Across this entire state, it's not rural districts, it's not urban districts, it's not just suburban districts. Across the entire state, administrators and teachers who flow from the state's ed prep programs from the pipeline deny children an IEP that does just that. Educators this board has licensed reject the fundamental principle, as the Supreme Court describes, that every child should have the chance to meet challenging objectives, whether they're on an IEP or not. Excuse me. For the last 20 years, this board has not acted to ensure that the state's ed prep programs actually prepare teachers and administrators to serve the children of the Commonwealth. A couple years ago, the failing grades on early literacy embarrassed everyone enough to require at least something different from the state's ed prep programs in that regard. It's time you engage to ensure that the schools you accredit, and we took this on after, NCATE and TIAC and CAPE, we took this on, the accreditation of schools entirely, and we're not doing it. But it's up to you to ensure that the schools you accredit are competent in developing our future educators. Thank you.
Thanks, Jerry. Next, I'd like to call up Ruth Ortiz Collazo from the Wellesley Public Schools.
Hi. Thank you for this opportunity. When I was 18 years old, I walked to the Army office in Framingham to enlist. I was so happy to enter through the heavy glass door. Imagine myself wearing that uniform, making my family proud. The person inside the office sitting in a chair with his uniform, asked me, "How can I help you?" I explained that I would like to join the Army force. He replied, "You don't know English. Where are you from?" The officer continued mentioning places where I can take English classes. Looking and hearing at him, I feel undervaluable, sad and heartbroken. Being rejected from the Army officer program was deeply painful. I left his office confused about selecting a standard and how the language barrier is preventing me from contributing to something bigger than myself. Last year, I was called to the Human Resources Office to receive my termination letter for not passing the MTEL. I feel nervous. My mind went back to the many nights I wake up of thinking about this test, the sacrifice my family has made, and the need to leave what I love to do most, teaching. I felt disappointed to myself for not passing. I felt that no matter what I say, I will remain invisible, even though that I try hard. At the moment, I simply say to the human resources person, just let me stay. Let me try one more time. Like a movie, many things come rushing to my mind at that moment. I love teaching. I have been in me since I was 4 years old when I played teacher. How can it be I might no longer be able to see the faces of my student, my community, my extended family? How will my two medical students who come to have a conversation with me twice a week feel if they don't see me there any longer? How they feel comfortable coming to my room anytime to get a snack? I tell myself I have to keep fighting because I want to keep seeing all my students, the one who trusts me, the one who look at me every day. For me, teaching is not a job, it's who I am. I am asking you to give me a chance to keep moving forward my career and for me to break the untamable wall for us. I am asking you for your support. The proposal amendment to regulation on educator licensure and preparation program approval. Thank you so much. And I'm sorry I have to leave. My school lost 2 students and I have to be for the other students. But thank you for your time.
Thank you for coming in. Next up, I'd like to call Karis McLaughlin.
Good morning. And I want to start out by saying I introduced my topic as, 911, and one of the members had no clue what I was talking about, but when I changed it to 9/11, then it was clear. So I'm here to talk about 9/11. I saw a notification that there is a thrust to include 9/11 in the curriculum. And I applaud any effort that gives our children more information about the world and how it moves. I have not had an opportunity to look at the curriculum. And so my comments are going to be based on what I commonly know occurs with new curriculum. So I have some cautions about opening that event without lots of preparation. When I think of the Massachusetts experience with the teaching of slavery, which is part of American history, and you can just take it based on facts, we've done a miserable job. We have had experiences with teachers deciding that the best way to teach slavery is to reenact scenes of slavery, which means there's a master and there is the enslaved. And these are people who I do not believe are mean-spirited, but they're uneducated around how you teach difficult subjects. I looked at DESE's recent grant on civics. In that grant, it was stated that most of the schools in Massachusetts do not have a clue about how to teach civics. It's your own data. take a peek. Somebody got a grant, no work was done, no work. Because when you can tell me that under 100 educators had a benefit from a grant, that's failure. That is absolute failure in our country where civic engagement is the most important thing that we can teach children. So I have fears about opening a new set of curriculum when DESE does not have the infrastructure, and you don't have it today, to protect students once we talk about subjects that are difficult. We need to talk about these subjects because they are impacting our kids every day. I kind of wish that I had seen a curriculum based on the Sabbath, because in the Jewish tradition, of course, that's the weekly tradition of going to synagogue. And some of us others, I am a Seventh-day Adventist, and I share that tradition. There's a lot of talk about that, and children need to have an understanding of the history, and it's part of your historical frameworks. And so I caution you, as you open up the door to new curriculum, which is a wonderful thing because we need to be innovative, make sure that it is vetted properly. Make sure that once it's introduced to the school districts, that you don't have children at each other in ways that are inappropriate because they have inappropriate guidance from their leaders. Please make sure that this rolls out properly. Thank you.
Thank you, Karis. Next up, one more thing. Did Tracy Stewart ever happen to make it in? Oh, yes, there you are, okay. I'm gonna call on Tracy first and then the last one that was on. Thank you. So this is Tracy Stewart, school committee member from the Tri-County Regional Vocational Technical High School.
Thank you, Chair Craven, but let me start by correcting you. I am now a former member of the Tri-County School Committee, unfortunately. Good morning, Chair Craven and members of the board. I am Tracy Stewart, a resident of Medway, an alumna of Tri-County, a parent of a 2024 graduate, and I have served as a school committee member and currently sit as the president of the Education Foundation. My public comment today is in regards to the vocational admissions. Since the 8-2 vote in May of 2025, this body has operated under a delusion of equity while ignoring the wreckage being created in real time. During the deliberations leading to this policy, members Moriarty and Hills both raised a critical question. Is this board acting within its legal mandate or overstepping it? Member Moriarty was clear. The state already possesses the tools to investigate and prosecute specific districts for noncompliance. Yet, this board chose a path of sweeping regulatory overreach, and as Moriarty famously put it, the board is, quote, using a chainsaw where a scalpel was required. By mandating a blanket lottery, you bypass the legislative intent of Chapter 74 programming and stripped away the legal authority of local school committees to set policy. The legality of this mandate has been in doubt since the beginning, notably when Member Hills questioned how the state could justify an admissions process that disregards the very metrics, like attendance and performance, that define student readiness. If this policy destabilizes municipal budgets in rural communities or towns like Marblehead, or erodes access to gateway cities like Brockton, the question will no longer be about the policy's failure. It will be about this board's impact on municipalities and your legal authority to mandate it in the first place. Across the Commonwealth, families are being torn apart. We are seeing this in real time in multiple schools where twins, one is accepted, the other is rejected. Siblings heartbroken because they weren't lucky enough to draw the same opportunity their older sibling earned by applying just 1 year ago. Also not lucky, the next generation of families of plumbers and electricians who have dreamt of taking over the family business. You have stripped schools of the ability to recognize a student as a unique individual. In 2019, a struggling C-average middle schooler on an IEP with over 30 absences was waitlisted at Norfolk Aggie, but was able to earn her seat at Tri-County because an interviewer saw her desire and motivation under your system, That child is no more than a discarded number. That child was mine. Furthermore, this lottery is a fiscal disaster for Marblehead, who's facing a $500,000 unbudgeted hit to Essex Tech in a single year. In Medway, 10 students are waitlisted, and the shift to a municipal assessment by hundreds of thousands of dollars. You are destabilizing local budgets. The public is exhausted by the insulting canned one-size-fits-all responses from the department. Parents who reach out receive nothing more than a robotic copy and paste scripted suggest that they look into career-connected learning at their local high schools. While CTE pathway programs are great for some families, this is a slap in the face to families who understand the massive difference between an immersive Chapter 74 program and what a CTE pathway is, which is a high school elective. Legislatively, there are multiple nonpartisan items actively in play, including Amendment 1580, Vocational School Admissions Reform, and the Vocational Task Force Bill, representing the clear will of the Commonwealth to reject this mandate. Both of these are supported by the Massachusetts Vocational Technical Coalition. The most important thing I need you to know right now is that the legal teams have arrived. At Tri-County School Committee meeting earlier this month, the board discussed a public records request from the Pacific Legal Foundation, a high-stakes firm with a formidable record before the Supreme Court. They are seeking very internal records and guidance documenting concerning the new lottery system. This presents a challenge for the school committee that was already reluctant to adopt the mandated lottery, given that their historical admissions were never disproportionate. Now, the committee finds itself perplexed by the scale and the intent of this legal foundation request. Vocational education has evolved from a labor shortage solution into the economic fuel of our state and a premier debt-free opportunity for our youth. I ask, why would you dismantle a system that worked? Why refuse to recognize that the demand and the support for expansion of true immersive programming is what is needed? This era of mandated lottery admissions is being met with organized direct opposition. The coalition is standing up for every individual child because the adults steering this policy have allowed political influence and bureaucratic ego to overshadow the fundamental purpose of vocational education. If this is not corrected here with this board, surely it will be corrected in the legislature or in the courts. Thank you.
Thank you. And our last public speaker is Ed Lambert from the Mass Business Alliance for Education.
Morning.
Morning.
I appreciate the opportunity to offer some comments about the path to a new state graduation standard in Massachusetts and the bridge we're crossing to get there. We're grateful to the governor for recognizing the need for a statewide graduation standard and for her creation of the Graduation Council. We're also very grateful for the work of that council thus far and the development of a plan that includes some very strong foundational elements, particularly the proposed use of end-of-course exams to assess student mastery. We know more details need to be developed, and we want to make sure that those exam results are meaningful and not contaminated by merging them with variable, subjective grading policies which differ from district to district. A uniform, objective, common assessment that is consistent across schools and districts is the only way to ensure rigor and equity. We believe that students should be required to pass these exams, and schools should be expected to help all students reach that bar. It's the only way to ensure high expectations for all students and not have zip codes define one's achievements. But I also want to speak to what is happening and will happen while we take the time to finalize a standard and prepare schools to deliver on it. You may have seen that several school districts recently have announced and celebrated what they refer to as record high graduation rates. But the press releases don't mention that this comes at a time when there is no state standard and that we have only local standards governing what is driving those graduation rates. We know that grade inflation and graduation inflation are real things, both in Massachusetts and across the nation. The latest NAEP scores were the lowest in 20 years at a time when GPAs were the highest over that same period. MCAS scores in Massachusetts continue to decline in the very districts where graduation rates are going up. University of California at San Diego found that 60% of their admitted students with a collective GPA of 3.5 needed remedial math. We hear stories here in Massachusetts of teachers pressured to pass students by administrators worried about how low graduation rates will affect their schools. Couple all of this with early data, as stated in a recent opinion piece by former Secretary Jim Pizer, that under the guidelines the board established last year, 2/3 of districts have established D- as their standard for satisfactory completion. So we ask today, as you collect and analyze the competency determination policies of local districts, is that you use that opportunity to review and take action to strengthen the interim regulations and oversight that will have to exist while we put in place a more permanent system, and that you do so to ensure rigor and that this generation of students doesn't get stalled on this bridge to the future. Specifically, we also ask that you begin an analysis of local grading policies along the lines of things that were suggested by Member West last year, to use data to analyze at the level of each high school where there are disparities between MCAS scores and GPAs. That kind of analysis we think will be helpful in informing both the development of a new statewide standard, but also its implementation to ensure that rigor and high expectations don't exist just on paper, but on every classroom and in every classroom across the Commonwealth. We thank you very much for your attention to this and for your continued work, and MBAE looks forward to working with other members of the Graduation Council, with the Secretary and the Commissioner and others as these details get put together so we can have a very strong system in Massachusetts, one that we think exemplifies Massachusetts' commitment to public education. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ed. And sorry, one more speaker, Jessica Tang from the AFT.
Good morning, Commissioner, members of the board, and welcome, Secretary Reich. My name is Jessica Tang, I'm president of AFT Massachusetts, which represents educators, librarians, and support staff in districts across the state, including many of our gateway cities and those with vibrant immigrant communities. The AFT Massachusetts remains committed to increasing educator diversity in every district while fighting for the workplace conditions and support these educators need to succeed. We know how valuable it is to have a diverse and multilingual educator workforce. All students deserve to have educators that they can relate to, who understand their histories and culture. I know this firsthand from my own experience as a student and as an educator. So whether it's at the Margarita Munoz in JP or the Callahan Elementary School in Lynn or Salem High School, students should have the opportunity to learn from the unique perspectives diverse educators bring to the classroom. Research has repeatedly shown that all students benefit when exposed to diverse educators' experiences, showing improvements across academic, social, and emotional outcomes. Today is an important step as we look towards the implementing evidence-based strategies as part of the Educator Diversity Act, ones that we can be confident will help expand the diversity of our workforce. So I'd like to thank Commissioner Martinez for the proposed alternative licensure pathway for communications and literacy skills MTEL he's presenting today, and urge the board to vote in support of this proposal. We also do urge the board and commissioner to reconsider alternative pathways for subject matter skills tests. States that have a strong diverse educator workforce credit alternative pathways as a key driver to educator diversity. And if Massachusetts is serious about addressing this issue, we can expect that providing alternate pathway to licensure when it comes to one test is going to fix the problem. I'm proud to say that in Boston, we've been working on this issue personally myself for decades now, and we have a lot of evidence of what does work and what the challenges are, and we're happy to speak to anyone on the board as well about what we've learned from that experience. And we urge you again to reconsider alternative pathways for subject matter tests, which we believe would be a powerful way to improve diversity without sacrificing rigor. While on topic of English and multilingual learners, I'd be remiss if I didn't briefly mention something we're working hard on, which is ICE Impact Stabilization Grants. Similar to during the COVID pandemic, where there were grants for districts that had enrollment declines, we believe that our districts hardest hit by ICE immigration enforcement, Boston, Lawrence, Chelsea, and Lynn, where too many of our students are living in fear and essentially sheltering in place, need that extra funding for our stability. And one of the most impacted communities, Lynn, received shocking news yesterday. One of its beloved paraprofessionals was told that she would expect to be deported at her next regularly scheduled check-in with ICE, less than 2 weeks away. ICE plans to send Mariola back to Guatemala, a country she fled 16 years ago after enduring a lifetime of systemic violence and abuse simply because her family is indigenous Mayan. Putting her son, a U.S. citizen with complex medical needs, is a position that no child should endure. She's an active member of our community and has been for over a decade. She's working towards her bachelor's at Salem State University, is a certified medical translator, and because of her work and deep ties to community, has been repeatedly granted a stay of removal. We're appealing to our federal delegation to help us keep her and her son safe at this horrific time and asking for your help too. But even if we are successful, we know this will send another chilling wave through the Lynn Public Schools. So thank you for your time today and your reconsideration of the alternative pathways for subject matter tests, and for doing all you can do as a board to protect our immigrant students, families, and the schools and educators that serve them. Thank you.
Thanks, Jessica. I only have one show and tell item for the board, because back in February, I spoke to Mrs. Rogers' 4th grade class at Collycott School, and I got an earful on MCAS from the 4th graders at the Collycott Cunningham School in Milton. So I did want to pass along their best wishes to the board and to everyone watching on the live stream, because we had some in favor, some not in favor, but I was remiss at the last meeting to not bring this up, because a very important constituency in these 4th graders, very intelligent, very well thought out arguments about for and against the MCAS, as we heard this morning from folks on the graduation requirements. So I wanted to make sure I gave them a little bit of FaceTime and airtime. So a shout out to Mrs. Rogers' 4th grade class and the continuing debate at every level on graduation requirements in the state. Sorry. And I would be completely remiss if I didn't welcome Secretary Reich, who we're going to hear from in a moment, our new Secretary of Education, which is great. Also, we were going to be seeing the Milken Educator of the Year, which is an honor for us as a board to be in that role. But I wanted to make sure that I welcomed Pat Bavis and Ken London and Elizabeth Gardner, who were here today, and they're on the agenda for the sort of just a preview of something, and we've heard in the public comment, but something that's been worked on for some time, as the 25th anniversary of the 9/11 attacks is this September, and as a board, we don't meet in the summertime, so I figured this was the best time to put forward some of their work, just to show us an example of what's out there. So with that, I turn to the Secretary.
All right, good morning. Thank you, Chair Craven. And I'm very excited to be here and to work with all of you in this role. I'm almost 25 years of public education service, almost exclusively in Massachusetts. And I've served as a teacher, principal, superintendent for the last 13 years in 3 different districts, and now in this role. Normally I've been on that side of the table, so this is a little weird for me to be here. But I'm pleased to support the work of this board and the values that I know this board has espoused, and also to collaborate with the Department of Education, their staff, to better serve communities. I do believe that I'm a champion of educators, and when I say educators, I mean anybody who works in schools. Anybody that has an impact on children, which is anybody who's employed in a school district, in my opinion, is an educator. And I know firsthand how hard they work, as I've been in some challenging districts over the last 13 years. We're lucky to have the educators we have in Massachusetts. I'm also proud to say that I'm the parent of 2 children in the public schools in Massachusetts, and that my wife is a public school educator in the Commonwealth as well. But above all, I think the commitment is to advocate for the needs of children and families. That's why we serve. That's why I've served, and particularly those who have not been well served over time. And I think there are many children that have been very well served in Massachusetts, but we still have a lot of collective work to do, and I'm excited to be part of that over the next few years. So privileged to be a part of this, and I'm excited to join this team. Just have a couple highlights. The best part of this job is to see all the awesome things that are happening across the state. I had a chance, I didn't even know 413 Day existed, but I had a chance to be part of 413. And for me, that's personal. I spent a lot of time in area code 413 when I was in Holyoke, and had a chance to visit Pittsfield and the Boys and Girls Club a few weeks ago to highlight the Gateway to Pre-K agenda and the Literacy Launch Initiative, which are two critical initiatives to see how early literacy instruction is rolling out. On the day we were in Pittsfield, it was the day that the educators were starting to implement some of the new pre-K curriculum. So that was excited to be a part of that and see the work on the ground in one of our gateway cities. I then had a chance to go to North Adams, which I had never been to before. What a beautiful place to visit, at the Mass College of Liberal Arts. And it was powerful to hear the stories of early college students talking about the impact of the program had on their education and their career goals. And then I ended with a real highlight. I ended up in a flight simulator at in Turner Falls at Franklin County Technical School. Didn't realize that we had a few aviation programs across the state, and Franklin County Tech will be the new one, the newest one, and they have as they still working on getting their approval from DESE. But to see the equipment, and the plans for this program is spectacular. I don't think I should be enrolled. I don't think I should be anywhere off the ground. But it was very impressive to hear about the educators who are spent the whole year planning for the launch of the program, and to see all the intensive planning that had been done in order for the state-of-the-art in one of only 5 programs across the country. And again, one of the things that distinguishes Massachusetts. I do want to thank Deputy Commissioner Lauren Wu for joining me and being a sidekick on that long day, but exhilarating day in the 413. The last thing I just want to mention is the social media bill that Governor Healy just filed, and guidance on deep fake photos and videos that have come up. I don't want to end on a somber, but I think it's note, but it is important, I think, that we talk about that. I'm really proud to be part of an administration that's committed to protecting young people online and ensuring technology is used safely and responsibly. I know that firsthand as a parent of teenagers. My son just turned 13 this past weekend, and I think all of us as parents and as educators have a deep concern about social media and the ills that it can have. In particular, I appreciate the effort in the bill to include measures to reduce harmful content, increase transparency, and give families more tools to safeguard their children's online experiences, particularly as it requires an implementation of an age assurance system and default settings that would disable addictive design features like infinite scroll, autoplay, and algorithm-based feeds designed to keep users addicted. It would also turn off location tracking, disable notifications, and restrict the platform from access overnight and during school hours. I think it's also it's an easy way to flag harmful content and give families the ability to reset content feeds. Additionally, I'm proud, following this legislation being filed, that the administration, with the support of the department, released new statewide guidance reminding schools about creating deepfake AI generated nude images of a minor, that it's a criminal offense that must be promptly investigated, has to be taken seriously. And the guidance reiterates that incidents that schools must take the steps to stop the conduct, protect effective students and staff, and educate students on the harm and impact this abuse of technology can have. We want to remind folks that it is a crime to create, possess, or share these materials involving individuals under 18, regardless of whether the image is real or AI generated. I think together these efforts reflect a comprehensive approach to student safety, both in and out of the classroom. It helps students focus on their responsibility as learners and prepares them to successfully navigate the increasingly complex digital world in front of them. So I'm excited to be a part of this work and look forward to working with everybody in this room. I see a lot of familiar faces and advocates for our children. We appreciate the support and the commitment to public education across the Commonwealth. That concludes my comments for today.
Thanks, Mr. Secretary. Commissioner?
Thank you, Chair, and I also want to welcome Secretary Zreich and how he's hitting the road running. And I share with him it is a transition to go from a district leader to a state leader, and so I know both he and I will share that learning experience. I also, one of my favorite things to do in this job, especially because I'm not from Massachusetts, just to really see all the wonderful things happening in our state. And I'll just say this, every time board members that I'm out there at one of our schools, I wish I could bring 1,000 people with me. Just because, again, to get to see these programs in action, there's nothing like it. And so I was able to visit Shawshing Valley Regional Voc Tech High School in Billerica. I'm gonna say this: the phonics in this state is no joke. It is like a different. So anyway, I won't even go there. As a multilingual student, I'm just saying, But I got to see students and talk about their passions, and got to see students who passed their certification exams. And I'll just say this, board members and community, I get it. These schools are gems. We have some of our amazing leaders in the audience, Aaron and Karen. They're gems. I can see every student would want to go to one of these schools. They are well invested in. Kudos to our state, both in the capital dollars and the programmatic dollars. I get it. And this is why this year, we will have the largest expansion in Chapter 74 programs, both on the Secretary's office and my office around capital and around programming dollars, because again, the challenge is we just don't have enough seats. It's just the demand is just so strong. I'm continuing to encourage our comprehensive high schools to add more Chapter 74 programs because, again, there's just so much demand. And by the way, this is not about college or no college. I don't think that's a thing. Most of our students that go to these Chapter 74 programs go to college. It really is about just high quality programming. And it really is about having access to the most up-to-date equipment that I always say this, if I would have had access to these programs, I'd be a better adult today. I'd be a better spouse. I'd be a better, just because the skills you learn as a young person, there's just nothing like it. And so, again, we'll continue to work on these issues, but just know everybody, these are gems. I get it. I can see why our students want to be there. I also got to go I was with Representative Paish, Leader Paish, and the Boston Plan for Excellence at Dudley, the Dudley Street Neighborhood School Charter School, where I actually got to see firsthand a teacher residency program that has been in place for many years, very successful, has actually created a very, a good, strong pipeline of diverse teachers, for Boston. And so I got to see that firsthand. And again, it was just another good example of good work that we have to figure out how to scale. And then and this was sort of personal for me because I don't get to visit a lot of our specialty schools. And so I'm visiting them now here in Massachusetts. And I got to visit Millmark, New England, and Andover. And I think I shared this with you, Chair. I'm still some of these visits, they just leave impressions that I just keep thinking about. And this is a school where board members, they receive our children with the most acutest disabilities. And these are, many times children that have been it didn't work for them in multiple school settings. So this is maybe their second or third setting. And the approach that they take in this school, it is a medical diagnostic approach. They don't do timeouts. They don't put kids in isolated rooms. They just don't do any of that. In fact, they shared how they really work with the families to unlearn those behaviors. Huge waiting lists. They have 2 sites in Massachusetts. But I was just methodical and thoughtful approach from President Rita Gardner and her leadership team. Again, just leaves a lasting impression for me. And then I got to visit Lowell High School, which, by the way, is in the process of applying for expanding Chapter 74 programs. So again, got to see in action, working with talking to students and the teachers and the staff about, again, the importance of integrating these programs. And so right now they're in the pipeline for expanding their Chapter 74 programs. Wonderful high school, again, that also works well with their Greater Lowell Tech High School. So they partner together. So again, I got to see that, and again, wait lists, at the tech school, so which is why they're expanding at Lowell High School. And then I visited the Mario Urbana Academy in Boston. So I got to meet one of our finalists for Teacher of the Year, Tommy Simmons. And so I think what was most heartening was he had been on a paternity leave, and he had come back, and the students immediately when they saw him, they just ran out to hug him. They just ran out. These are all, by the way, these are middle schoolers. Middle schoolers don't do that, FYI. Kindergartners do that. Middle schoolers don't do that. They actually went out, and I told Tommy, I said, I could see why you were one of our finalists. just a strong connection with the students. And again, just of course, dual language programs are just something that are very close to my heart. And then I got to go to Westfield State University, so I'm still learning our university system, and got to speak at the Early College Leadership Conference alongside my colleague, Commissioner Noe Ortega. And there, we really got a chance to, again, just talk to our practitioners about the importance of early college programs and why this is so important and our ambitious goals around it, and really, commitment to working with them to really strengthen our system. And then I got to go with Board Member Grant to represent Massachusetts at the ASU GSB Summit in San Diego, where I was on a couple of panels, including talking about civics, one of our most important topics that just came up today, how important that is in Massachusetts, as well as a few, got to be with state chiefs from all over the country, again, talking about common challenges and issues that we're working on. And then, and this was special for me, this is the first time, and I think we've been doing it for more than 70 years, Student Government Day. And Isabella was there, and I told Isabella, I said, so even as a commissioner, I don't know, maybe this is different for you, Secretary, I don't get to actually go in the chambers of where the legislators are at, and so the students were actually sitting in the chambers, and we had the student governor, student lieutenant governor. It was just the coolest thing I've ever seen. And when I asked, like I said, it's been going on for more than 70 years, and they replicate the whole process, and they were debating, some of the current bills on cell phone use, and then also about AI, and I just thought this is like and talk about like civics live in action. I think we had about 200 schools that were participating, so I just thought, interesting idea of how do we integrate that statewide, especially as we think about civic requirements for graduation, where schools can take topics and they can really develop a process, and they'll have a representative from their school. So anyways, my mind was just, my wheels were turning there about how to do that. But like I said, it was the first time that I got to be in the chamber as the commissioner, so I was telling Isabella, so it was just kind of a cool treat to be up there with the students. So again, everybody, this is the best part of the job, is just being able to see everything, but we also know we have a lot of challenges. As the Secretary said, we have a lot of work to do, but I still say this, I see so many assets in our Commonwealth, and I think for me, it's always like, how do we leverage those assets? And absolutely, let's face the challenges head on, but also, let's not forget, we have a lot to work with, but we still have a lot to do. So thank you, Chair.
Thanks, Commissioner. And I always was an advocate for the board meetings to be on the road and actually touch and feel and see. So we're going to renew that, but next month we'll be in Hudson for Isabella's high school. So at least we get on the road a little bit as a board. First, the first item on the agenda is the Milken Educator Award. I'm going to turn it over to Commissioner Martinez.
Yes, I'm excited to introduce the Milken Educator Award winner, Elizabeth Metz. Ms. Metz is a 9th grade history teacher at Excel Academy High School in East Boston. Milken Award, by the way, is one of the most prestigious awards in education. I just want to call that out. You can't get nominated. I still don't even know how they do it, but again, it's a national award. But they're chosen through the Milken Educator Award confidential selection process. The award recognizes exemplary early to mid-career elementary and secondary school teachers, principals, and specialists across the country. Again, this is a national award who are furthering excellence in education. The recipients attend a national forum and join the National Milken Educator Network. By the way, I got this here, also meet the alumni. We have other teachers that have won here in Massachusetts. Massachusetts has a long history of partnering with the Milken Family Foundation to recognize excellent educators. I now welcome to the table Elizabeth Metz, our Milken Award winner. Let's give her an applause, everybody. Caitlin Happlejaw, our Educator Effectiveness Program Coordinator at DESE, and Sarah Stuntz, our Principal at Excel Academy Charter High School. Welcome.
Hoja from the Office of Educator Effectiveness here at DESE, and I am so excited to introduce you to Elizabeth Metz, the 2025 Massachusetts Milken Educator of the Year. As Commissioner Martinez, I think, mentioned, Ms. Metz is a 9th grade history teacher at Excel Academy Charter High School in East Boston. There are so many things that makes Miss Metz' classroom so special. Miss Metz fosters student ownership of their learning through research projects, collaborative opportunities, and self-paced instruction. Since she joined at Excel Academy Charter, student participation in AP World History has doubled. And beyond her own classroom, Miss Metz also supports her community as a ninth grade team leader, a mentor to new teachers, and a National Honor Society coordinator. And I was even just hearing about a ninth grade camping trip that they plan to take later this week with rain in the forecast. So she's adventurous as well. When Miss Metz's name was called in the Excel Academy Charter High School gym, you should have seen just the eruption of pride and joy across the faces of all students and her colleagues as well, which I thought really just was proof of the impact that you've had not only on your students, but the broader school community. So I'm very excited to introduce Miss Metz.
Thank you. Good morning. My name is Elizabeth Metz, and Caitlin just introduced me and my titles. I'm also a Teach Plus and Curate Fellow this year. This past February, I had the incredible honor of receiving the Milken Educator Award. That award has been a powerful moment of community for my school, for East Boston and Chelsea, and for the students and families I've had the privilege of working with there for the past 8 years. On a personal level, after 11 years in the classroom, especially when my first year felt very uncertain, being seen in this way, even being called the Bad Bunny of teaching by the former secretary, means a great deal. But what has stayed with me most is what this moment represents beyond me. In a profession where burnout is real and many educators leave within the first 5 years, recognition like this matters not just for individuals, but for what it signals about the work itself. To me, the Milken Award is about elevating the profession and validating the work happening in classrooms every day, especially at a time when education feels increasingly complex. With ed tech, AI, screen time, you name it, it's there. As a state, we are navigating a literacy and now a math crisis while supporting students with a wide range of needs. The kind of teaching that makes a difference right now, rigorous, relationship-driven, and student-centered, can feel difficult or even intimidating to implement. What the Milken Award does is say, this work matters and it's worth investing in. In my 9th grade classroom, I tried to balance high expectations with strong relationships. One of my former students said it best when he texted me after the award, quote, "You really do take those extra steps with your students to not only get to know them on a personal level, but to ensure they all learn in the way that's best for them." That balance drives everything I do. During a review session on classical empires in the fall, a student was struggling to understand the word bureaucracy. So I asked her, what's another word that ends in C-R-A-C-Y? Think about the type of government we have in America. Now, this was a student who had passed the civics MCAS the year before. I could see the gears turning, but the word never came. The answer was democracy. That moment reminded me how different memorizing information is from truly understanding the systems we live in. In my classroom, students read primary sources, analyze diverse perspectives, and write evidence-based arguments about identity markers throughout time. Those are not just history skills. They are literacy skills and civic skills as well. And right now, that work is more important than ever. During my lunch period, I teach a literacy intervention group for 9th graders reading at about a 5th or 6th grade level. Now, these students are incredibly capable, but when reading is a barrier, everything becomes harder, including understanding how our government works. That's why I've worked to build a classroom that gives students more ownership over their learning through self-paced instruction, structured collaboration, and projects like National History Day. These approaches take time to build and can feel risky, but when they work, they transform how students see themselves as learners and as agents of change. This year, I had a student advance to the state National History Day competition. This is a student who didn't always see herself as someone who could present publicly or compete at that level. At regionals, and again at states, she stood in front of judges explaining a historical argument on the Medjay restoration that she had researched and analyzed independently. That is what happens when students are given both the support and the expectation to think deeply. At my school in East Boston, many of my students are multilingual learners, and many will be the first in their families to attend college. Families choose charter public schools like ours because they are looking for that combination of high expectations and strong support. Ensuring that all public schools, including charter public schools, are funded fairly is essential so that students have access to these opportunities. When we invest in that, along with strong literacy instruction at the secondary level especially, and meaningful civic learning, we are not just improving outcomes. We are preparing students to understand the world and to shape it. Thank you for your time today and for the work you do to support educators and students across the Commonwealth.
Thank you, Ms. Metz. This is an opportunity for the board members to not only congratulate you, but also to ask any questions about your observations. Anybody? Vice Chair Hills?
I'm just going to make a comment at the risk of dating myself. This award, which is wonderful, every year has a special place in my heart, because I will tell you, my first job after graduate school was at the tail end of Mike Milken's career at Drexel Burnham. And seeing, this award come to mean what it means every year and what it represents about the kind of teacher you are is terrific. But I always have a special smile on my face for the Milken Award. So congratulations.
Thank you.
Thank you, Matt. Any other? I'll go to Dr. West and then Secretary Reich.
So thanks for being here and congratulations. I was intrigued by your mention of being a Curate Fellow. I wonder if you could talk a little bit about your experience with that program and then what role Curate has played in decision-making at Excel, if any.
So I started as a Curate Fellow in January for the History and Social Studies 9th through 12th team. So we've been reviewing a couple textbooks and making sure they're aligned with the HSS rubric that DESE has provided. And so I'm bringing my findings to my history department at Excel and really thinking about how is our curriculum aligned with that? How can we be pushing ourselves, especially when it comes to making sure that it's really inquiry driven? That's been a big talking point in our panel sessions, is this importance of high quality inquiry driven. What does that look like? What does that sound like? And also just making sure that all language domains are being met for multilingual learners and that it's accessible not just for students but for teachers as well. Those have been kind of the main talking points that have come up in those panels. So I'm excited to bring that to our history department at Excel and think about how can we implement those findings in our curriculum as well.
Secretary.
Yeah, this is a true story, but about 20 years ago, I was at a Patriots game, and I introduced myself to the people behind me, and the introduction was, I'm so-and-so, and this is my wife so-and-so, and she's a Milken Educator Award winner, right? And at the time, I didn't know what that was. I went back and I looked it up, and it is truly an impressive award. And I now, that was a reminder of how true, she was a celebrity really in my mind, and you're a celebrity in your role. It is truly an honor. I just want to congratulate you on that award. I also, as being a board member for the last few years at Excel, I know the work that you've done and the work that the team has done there, and I want to commend you for that. The impact you've had on kids has been tremendous. And I do have a quick question for you. As a state that's trying to better serve multilingual learners, I'm just curious, I'm not asking, you don't have to give a long dissertation on this, but I'm curious about what you have seen to be most effective as you work with multilingual learners who come to you, as you said, that are behind. What have you found to be the most effective strategies that you've used?
Yes, so I think what's most effective for supporting our multilingual learners is staffing. We need a lot more multilingual learner specialists, and you've mentioned this to me, but the process is very hard. You need a master's degree to be a multilingual learner specialist in this state, and that can just be really hard to find. But when we do have those specialists, that really differentiated support, that one-on-one attention is what has helped our multilingual learners make the most gains, because they're coming in at different access levels, 1 through 5. Some of them are dually identified. That's where I'm seeing my highest disparities right now, is my dually identified students who are multilingual and have a disability, because it's such a unique combination for each student. So you really need that individual attention. Not just for multilingual learners to meet them where they're at for each of the 4 language domains, but also for their access level. But you also need it for the dually identified students who have that access level variation as well as the disability variation. So perhaps alternative pathways for multilingual learner specialist certification would be supportive so that we can get more support in the building.
Thank you. Christina Grant online, did you have a question or a comment?
One, congratulations again. Milken is a huge honor and it's a lifetime partnership. I mean, they'll be in your life forever. I just wanted to hear more about the field trip this weekend.
Yes, great question. So every year we take the ninth graders on a camping trip to Camp Burgess, which is run by the YMCA in Sandwich, Massachusetts. So we take them. It's a lot of community building activities, like low ropes. There's a rock climbing wall. I've never made it up successfully, so maybe I'll try again this year. We have a campfire where we sometimes do skits. This year we have a karaoke machine. We do s'mores. We have to teach them how to make s'mores. Graham crackers are debatable as to whether they want one or not. But yeah, it's just they like to fall into the lake as a way of going swimming, even though the water is freezing. I'm from Texas, so I'm like, no way am I gonna fall into the lake out of the canoe. But thank you for the invite. Yeah, so we're taking them this Thursday. It's supposed to be really cold and rainy, so wish us luck. But we're gonna have a lot of fun. This is like my 6th or 7th. I did say 6, 7, unfortunately. 6th or 7th year going. I teach 9th grade. 6th or 7th year going, so I'm excited to be back there. It's a beautiful campus.
Very cool. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other board members? Oh, Mary Ann Stewart.
Again, I am always so moved by award winners and teachers like yourself who are just represent such excellence that, education isn't something that you get, it's something that you claim, and that you are actually moving and working to help kids synthesize the world around them and to connect the dots from everything that's happening. So it's such a wonderful opportunity for them to be in your classroom and and obviously for you to be working with them on this. So anyway, congratulations.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
If there are no other questions, I think we would ask you to take a picture with us, Ms. Metz.
Of course.
The celebrity element of this. Okay, we're going to start back up with our budget update, and then we're going to move to the 9/11 education resources discussion.
So just before our CFO begins, just a few comments. On April 15th, the House and Ways Means Committee released its budget recommendations for fiscal year 2027. So board members, Bill's going to give you an update of just a summary of what that budget is or what it looked like. I just want to call out two budget lines that were in the governor's budget that were not in the House and Ways Means budget, which I believe are critical to improving student improvement and tied closely to our priorities. So one is, we didn't have, what wasn't included was the literacy grant. And so board members, this is our grant that is a multi-year grant that we have had commitments to our districts, PRISM 1, PRISM 2, and right now we're actually releasing our final set of funds even for more PRISM 2. So these are funds that are helping our districts implementing high quality curriculum, providing professional development, other critical resources. So again, I just want to call that out. We also have the literacy institutes that, there was such a high demand, so we had 500 slots last summer that got filled within days. So we had expanded to more than 1,000 for this upcoming year because, again, the demand was just so high. So again, just to emphasize how important these dollars are, and so, again, we're advocating for them. The other line item that wasn't in the budget was the Reimagining High School funding, which is kind of a vague description, but it does pay for our low-income students the AP exams, which, by the way, are very expensive. I mean, even compared to when I took, when I was in high school. And so it's really important to have those funds, as well as they also do support our early college programs, and also they also support MyCap, which is our counseling framework that is going to be now a graduation requirement. So again, these are just two line items that are critical that we want to just continue to advocate. But I will ask Bill to go through the rest of the budget.
Good morning, members of the board. Nice to be with you today at the end of April. Just quickly, in terms of level setting where we're at, as we speak, the full House is debating the bill. The commissioner just picked a couple of highlights out on. Yesterday, there was some amendment action done as it relates to the education accounts. We're still reading through all of that, and we'll have once the House concludes, there'll be an update to what the House Ways and Means Committee released on the 15th. What I thought I could just do for you quickly is walk you through some of the high points that are in the bill, and generally the comparative contrast we do as it relates back to where the governor is at with her budgetary recommendations. So we'll go through the education aid accounts, which is, as you know, about 95% of our total spending on the state side. Then we'll talk about some of the other key spending areas, and I'll just sort of walk you through where we go from April 28th until we have a new state budget for fiscal 27 later this summer. So real quick, all of our education aid accounts are at their highest levels they've ever been. That's not to say folks don't feel there needs to be more, but just as a matter of sort of factual dollar values, where this Commonwealth continues a strong investment in its K-12 public education sector. Primarily as witnessed by Chapter 70, little under $300 million growth from this current year's aid distribution. I probably sound like a worn-out record on this, but FY27 is the 6th and final year of the rate implementation that was called for in the Student Opportunity Act. For those who were with us back then, that was originally a 7-year schedule, but with the introduction of the COVID year, the legislature paused the implementation, so it became, and caught up the next year, so it became a 6-year schedule, and those rate increases are across those 5 benefit categories that are listed in the presentation. Obviously, that means that the biggest aid increases were for communities with the highest concentration of those students. You've heard about this. It's been a matter of discussion. We're obviously in a declining enrollment period as it relates to overall foundation enrollment. This is not, I'm not breaking any news here, but just factually, because it comes up in discussion around needs for funding. You know, we've got 236 districts decreasing, 81 increasing. That ties into this piece 2 bullets down. A lot of discussion to the extent that the way the formula works, you're either getting aid or you're foundation aid, or you're getting minimum aid, and minimum aid is designed to ensure there's increase. There's always an increase in aid going to public school districts year after year. The governor had proposed $75 per student in her budget, which had a cost of roughly $50 million in the total spend. House Ways and Means has increased that to $160 per pupil, so you know, roughly it's about $100 million expenditure in the $7.6 billion. The House also has included a reserve account. It's a little bit unclear exactly how it would function if it becomes part of the final spend, but it is, there has been a lot of public commentary about concerns in certain districts with loss of students, particularly English language learners. That was heard by representatives in the House, and they've created this reserve account. And as the bullet says, it's a little bit unclear on how it would function, but that's a matter to get sorted out if it becomes part of law when we get to later this summer. Moving past Chapter 70, Circuit Breaker, $805 million worth of spending authorization in the combination 2. It's worth me just highlighting this quickly. So when we talk about spending for FY27, there is the General Appropriations Act, the traditional state budget, but since the introduction of the fair share revenue resources to the Commonwealth, both the governor and the legislature has been using supplemental budget bills as a way to highlight spending those dollars targeted, as you know, either for education or transportation purposes, in our case, education. So you really need to look at a combination of both the fair share supplemental budget bills and the General Appropriations Act to tie together the total spend. But in Circuit Breaker's case, $805 million. With that, you know, we won't know till we actually get the claims for this school year, but we do project that would be sufficient to cover 100% of the entitlement, which, as you know, is 75% of claims for both instruction and tuition and transportation. The commitment that came in the SOA is the Commonwealth was going to fund 100% of the entitlement around charter school tuition reimbursement. House Ways and Means has a number similar to the governor, $200 million, and we believe once the final enrollment settles for charters, which for students attending charter schools, which would be later this fall once we get SIMS data, that would be sufficient to cover 100%, the 100% requirement. Just lastly, in the transportation accounts, this is another combination where it's both the fair share supplemental dollars and the General Appropriations Act, but those dollars do increase in FY27. We project to be able to cover regional transportation and non-residential VOC, which is a much smaller component of it all, at a 90% reimbursement rate. Homeless transportation grows by $6.5 million in the House bill, and we would project to be able to reimburse at approximately 52%, which is what we're reimbursing this year at. I should say I didn't, as I see Member Smitty out of the corner of my eye, and I want to be respectful. Hello. I did not put it on the slide. I probably should have. The rural aid account, which has become part of our aid distribution programs here in the at the department. The governor had recommended $20 million in her House 2 budget back in January. The House actually funded it at $10 million. I don't know if there's any. I'm sure there's some amendments on the House floor to potentially increase that. I just don't know what's occurred as I sit here in front of you at the moment. So we'll be watching that as well. And then lastly, the commissioner touched upon some of these other areas. There's a number of things I could list, but we pick out some of the key top things. Continued commitment to universal free meals. I think by all accounts, everyone acknowledges how significant and positive a program this has been in ensuring the combination of federal and state dollars are covering the nutritional needs of students in the K-12 sector. The commissioner already touched upon the literacy launch piece. But also there's no new funding for the high dosage tutoring piece as well in the House bill. That doesn't mean there won't be when it's all said and done, as well, I'll get to it in a sec, but with the House, we're only 2/3 of the way through the appropriation entities. We still have the Senate, and the commissioner talked about reimagining high school. Just to give you a couple other quick things, the governor also had recommended $6 million for additional mental health services, wraparound supports. That is not funded in the House Ways and Means bill, as well as our social emotional learning grant program, which has become a staple of our service delivery here at the department. So we're spending over $3 million this year, and the governor had proposed $3 million for next year. And the commissioners talked to you before about the Accelerated Achievement Initiative that was included in the governor's budget. That is not funded by the House Ways and Means Committee. So where we go from here, as I said, full House debate is occurring as we speak. Looking for the Senate Ways and Means Committee to release approximately in the next 2 weeks. I believe it's going to be on the 13th of May, the second Wednesday in May, but I could be wrong. And with that, concluding their action on the full bill by the end of May. Move into a joint House-Senate Conference Committee to create one bill for presentation back to the governor, which would be what we refer to as the conference report. And then the governor would review the bill, and sometime late June, early July, we'd have a full state budget. Along with, we're watching to see what happens with the supplemental budget for the fair share funds. So that's the other companion piece. That's what's happening on the state budget. So happy to take questions.
Any questions?
Yeah, I have a question. I noticed the increase in unhoused transportation and wanted to ask if there has been an increase in unhoused students and families. If we have seen an increase in unhoused students.
I'm not sure what you mean by in-house, Member Roach.
Unhoused, homeless.
Yeah, homeless students.
Oh,
Bill.
homeless students. I'm probably not the best person to answer that, but I don't think we have a dramatic increase in our homeless student population. We have cost growth in the delivery, just because across all of transportation we just have more expensive rides, if you will. But I'm not 100% sure we've had a significant increase in homeless students. But we'll get back to you, Member Rocha, on that.
Thank you.
I think, was your question about the funding? Whether there's been a
the
significant
number.
increase in the funding or the numbers?
No, there was an increase in the funding, but I wanted to see if it was, especially given this
Yeah,
current,
we'll find out for you, Warren, but we don't think we saw an increase. Like Bill said, the driver and the funding increase is just the costs. You know, we're getting charged a lot more by our vendors, and that's a challenge that even the Inspector General's even raised as well.
okay. I was also asking because of the political climate, and I was trying to make the connection.
Yes, ma'am.
But thank you.
Mary Ann?
Yeah, I had a similar question around the increase in student enrollment in 81 districts and then, the decrease in others, but I hadn't really connected that. Is there a connection in any way? What can you tell us about those situations? The 81 districts that are experiencing an increase in enrollment, well, do we know what that is? And in terms of the declining enrollment across more than half of the districts, just curious where you are on that.
I can't tell you
Yeah,
exactly.
the only
Can we
thing I
find out what that
Yeah,
is?
we can definitely give you more analysis,
little
but what we've looked at is,
write-up.
as you look at enrollment declines,
Mhm.
we've seen significant enrollment declines really with our multilingual students as well as our lower income students. So, and then the other component that we're seeing, and it was more reflection, board members, of new students coming into the state. So we have had, because of birth rate declines, we've had just a steady decline in enrollment, about 3,000, which isn't a lot on a base of 900,000 to 1 million. But it was being masked because we were receiving so many new students coming to the state.
Yeah.
That completely stopped this year. And so, as well as, we saw some decline. So really, I think what we're projecting after this year is that we're just gonna see our steady declines we've seen every year, which is around, 3,000 plus. But really what we saw the biggest impact was a significant decline in multilingual students as well as low-income students.
Yeah, that aspect I was more familiar with than the 81 districts that are experiencing an increase, and I would like to understand
Yep.
that better.
And we can get you those details
Thank you.
over. Mhm.
Good, thank you.
Okay.
Of a comment than a question, but I'm sitting here trying to sort of interpret and make sense of the presentation as a whole, and it seems like there's a glass half full story in the sense that the legislature seems prepared to continue investing more in education overall, but there's a glass half empty component in that they've chosen to prioritize the formula aid over some of our priorities that we're able to leverage in more strategic ways. And it's a little bit disappointing to see the House becoming more generous, with places that are losing enrollment, while they're not sort of giving us the resources, or you, the resources that you can use more strategically. Bill, is it typical for sort of some of those priorities to be added back in later in the process? And is there anything that we can do to make it clear how important they are for us to be able to do our jobs?
Did you want to offer a comment, Commissioner?
Well, yeah, I think, so remember, I've shared this with the chair. I mean, for me, this is a learning experience. This is the first time going through this. And I've been very respectful about the processes because we have all our different lanes. And so if there's one thing that I've learned from this process is we really have to do we have to lay the groundwork quite a bit with our legislators. I mean, they really don't fully, always understand all the details of what's happening in the field. And it is, and I've said this publicly, I'm not going to turn away more resources for districts. I come from a district. That's where my career has always been. And so I'm always going to be an advocate for our districts. It does concern me when we continue to add funding with no request for higher accountability, no request for higher expectations of what the student impact should be. But I also feel, I'm taking this as a learning experience, board members, that, again, and partnering with our board chair and other board members, just laying the groundwork with legislators to help them understand both the challenges that exist in our districts, but also, frankly, helping them understand better strategies of how we can have a better impact. Because I love the fact that Massachusetts continues to increase funding. And there's definitely a lot of tight budgets across the state. Again, I don't want to minimize that, but we also have less children. And so, and those are just challenges. I mean, that's hard to, I've always led districts that mainly had student declines, enrollment declines. And so those are just really hard budgets to do. So I get it. But I do think there's an opportunity, Member West, to, for us to be, partner with the legislature and be very strategic about targeted funding needs that we're going to need, including some of the initiatives we're talking about today. Expanding our teacher pipelines are not going to happen in isolation without more funding. In making sure that our students have the targeted supports they need, including our multilingual students, will not happen unless there's more funding. And it has to be targeted. It cannot be just general funding. And I know, I don't want to speak for you, Vice Chair Hills, but you always talk about how minimum aid is, again, it's great for districts, but again, there's always a question of whether that addresses the needs of the state.
I would just offer, just as a, sorry.
I was just owning what the commissioner said.
Attributed to
I've
you.
said, yes.
What I'd say, Member West, also is the process isn't done yet.
Yeah.
There's past practice that certain branches prioritize things and others and they kind of meet eventually in a conference report. So, but as a general statement, the legislature is always going to be prioritizing education aid accounts to local school districts. And, I think we do have to be clear, as the commissioner is saying, if we need new investment capital to do things, be real clear on sort of what the need is, what the outcomes are going to be, and, effectively to go win support for it.
Okay. Thank you, Bill.
Thank you.
And we're going to move on to our Massachusetts 9/11 Education Resources agenda item. Sorry? I'm going to take them first, just because they've been waiting too long. So sorry about that. I didn't expect to do the budget.
It's okay.
I welcome this team that we see in front of us today. I met most of you last year around the time that there were some questions to Governor Healy and Lieutenant Governor Driscoll about the role of 9/11 curriculum. And at the time, we had a really robust discussion about the Board of Education in Massachusetts does not mandate curricular materials across the districts. However, there was a lot of discussion about the partnership that, and I'll let these folks introduce themselves, but in particular, Pat Bavis, whose brother Mark I had known in college. He was a star hockey player at Boston University and Catholic Memorial from Rosendale, Massachusetts, a neighborhood in Boston, who was killed on 9/11. And the concept that there'd be 25 years between that date and now, here we are. And so this being April, end of April, May, June, 9/11 will be on us before we know it. So I wanted to make sure that we had an opportunity for the board to hear at least a piece of the resources that are out there for education. So I'll let you guys introduce yourselves.
Okay, I'm going to start, and then Pat's going to make some remarks. Good morning. My name's Elizabeth Gardner. I'm a senior video producer at GBH Education and one of the team members who produced the new 9/11 educational resources in partnership with the Mass 9/11 Fund. I'm delighted to be here today to present those resources to the Board of Elementary and Secondary Education. I'll start by introducing GBH Education and PBS Learning Media and giving you just a brief overview of our work. GBH Kids and Education is a division of public media leader GBH. Through our work in early learning, K-12 curriculum-aligned content, educator support, and community engagement, we provide trusted, standards-based, and accessible resources that strengthen learning outcomes. GBH has a long history of partnering with Massachusetts agencies, community-based organizations, educators, and families to deliver educational impact in the Commonwealth. Our content reaches millions of children, parents, and educators free of charge nationwide, ensuring that every child, no matter where they live, has access to learning that inspires a lifetime of possibilities. With PBS, GBH runs PBS Learning Media, which you can see on your screen, Public Media's flagship digital learning service. that offers thousands of free standards-aligned videos, interactives, and lesson plans spanning all subjects for pre-K through 12 teachers and students. GBH is a leading producer of content for PBS Learning Media and works routinely with Massachusetts educators and students to develop, test, and disseminate resources that are designed to support classroom instruction with content that is research proven to help students learn subject knowledge and skills. In the 2024 through 25 school year, PBS Learning Media garnered 75 million views nationally and 2.2 million views in Massachusetts, with strong usage in both urban and rural districts, including gateway cities. The U.S. History Collection on PBS Learning Media builds on GBH's expertise in developing and combining engaging media with support materials and professional development for classroom use. It has attracted over 2 million users and 22 million page views since its launch in fall 2022. Importantly, a rigorous study across 17 states found that students taught with U.S. History Collection materials, compared to those who were taught business as usual, made significant gains in both historical content knowledge as well as historical thinking skills. While the U.S. History Collection is extensive, we recognized a significant gap in resources dedicated to explaining the events of 9/11, particularly for a generation of students born after 2001. Our collaboration with the Massachusetts 9/11 Fund proved to be an ideal solution for addressing this critical need. So, working closely with the Mass 9/11 Fund, our small video production and our curriculum team produced a series of 3 videos for high school and middle school students with several key objectives. 1, to provide a clear account of the events of September 11th, 2001, the deadliest terror attacks in U.S. history, and how brave individuals tried to thwart the attacks. 2, to outline the short and long-term impacts of the attacks. And 3, to explore how 9/11 is remembered through memorials at Ground Zero, the Pentagon, Shanksville, and here in Boston. A central focus of these video resources is to ensure that the individuals who lost their lives, their brave acts of resistance, and the specific role Massachusetts played in the attacks are never forgotten. We are proud to offer these resources in the U.S. History Collection on PBS Learning Media. So I'd like to play the first video of the series of 3 videos for you.
On the clear, nearly cloudless morning of September 11th, 2001, the United States experienced the single deadliest terrorist attack in its history. 4 commercial planes, each loaded with thousands of gallons of jet fuel, were hijacked and turned into guided missiles. Nearly 3,000 people from 90 countries lost their lives, including 2,753 people who were killed when the World Trade Center Twin Towers collapsed. The attacks began in Boston, far from the ultimate sites of destruction. 2 of the planes that struck the World Trade Center departed from Logan International Airport. The crews and many passengers on those flights were Massachusetts residents, making the state the starting point and home to some of the first victims of the attacks. The 9/11 attacks were planned and carried out by 19 men affiliated with Al-Qaeda, a terrorist network led by Osama bin Laden. Al-Qaeda spent years planning and training for a deadly attack on the United States. On the morning of September 11th, 5 hijackers boarded American Airlines Flight 11, and another 5 boarded United Airlines Flight 175 in Boston. At 7:59 a.m., Flight 11, carrying 76 passengers and 11 crew members, took off from Logan. 15 minutes later, at 8:14 a.m., Flight 175 with 51 passengers and 9 crew members followed. Both flights were bound for Los Angeles, but the hijackers diverted the planes to New York. At 8:46 a.m., Flight 11 was deliberately crashed into the North Tower of the World Trade Center. 17 minutes later, at 9:03 a.m., Flight 175 slammed into the South Tower, leaving no doubt that America was under attack. American Airlines Flight 77 departed from Washington Dulles International Airport for Los Angeles at 8:20, carrying 53 passengers, 6 crew members, and 5 hijackers. It was crashed into the western side of the Pentagon at 9:37 a.m., killing all people on board and 125 civilian and military personnel inside the building. At 8:42 a.m., United Airlines Flight 93 departed from Newark Airport bound for San Francisco, with 33 passengers, 7 crew members, and 4 hijackers. When passengers on board learned of the attacks on the World Trade Center via phone calls, they courageously voted to storm the cockpit, preventing the hijackers from reaching their intended target, likely the U.S. Capitol. Instead, as the passengers attempted to regain control of the cockpit, the hijackers diverted the plane and crashed it into an empty field in Shanksville, Pennsylvania. Everyone on board was killed, but there were no fatalities on the ground. From the earliest moments, crew members and passengers stood at the forefront of warning and resistance. Flight 11 attendants Amy Sweeney and Betty Ong calmly and clearly communicated urgent updates to American Airlines staff on the ground, thereby alerting the world of the hijacking. Their calls revealed a terrifying scene: attacks, murders, and the threat of a bomb in the cockpit. Captain John Oganowski, a Massachusetts resident, Vietnam veteran, and veteran commercial pilot, was murdered while at the controls of Flight 11, but helped activate the cockpit radio, allowing authorities to hear the hijackers' actions. Passenger Daniel Lewin, a Cambridge Tech innovator and former Israeli military officer, reportedly fought the hijackers before being fatally attacked. These victims showed incredible strength, focus, and resourcefulness in the midst of the attack, and were the first to alert, resist, and sacrifice. The Federal Aviation Administration ordered a nationwide ground stop at 9:25 a.m. on September 11th. All airborne flights were ordered to land immediately, and international flights were instructed to turn back or divert to Canada or other countries, emptying the skies for the first time in U.S. history. The nation responded to the attacks with a display of unity and resilience, guided by a promise to never forget, always remember.
The final resource we produced is an interactive lesson entitled September 11th, 2001, Tragedy, Courage, and Remembrance. This student-facing and student-paced interactive focuses on an essential question. In this case, how did September 11th, 2001 affect communities locally and across the nation, both immediately and in the years since? This interactive lesson provides an alternate way to showcase our videos and provide extra content and context. So for instance, you can see here, this is our first page, and you can see the menu here, which allows you to see the different pieces of the interactive lesson, the different pages. So on page 3, heroism and bravery, We share additional biographical info on heroes from the first video, plus an opportunity to hear more individual stories like Todd Beamer and Father Judge. And then here on the page, Rescue and Recovery, you can see here that we emphasize the scope of 9/11 in terms of harm done, over 400 first responders killed, massive size of the debris field in New York City, the huge number of people still affected by health issues, as well as the national and international impact and implications. So we are planning to present these resources to the broader community at the Boston Public Library on May 19th. I will be moderating a panel featuring one of our curriculum writers. Pat Bavis will be there, and we also will have an educator on the panel. We expect a high level of interest and enthusiasm, and we encourage you to attend. Thank you so much.
Thank the board for having us here today. Again, my name is Patrick Bavis. I am the director of the Mass 9/11 Fund Education Program. How'd I get here? Sometimes I question myself. Over 15 years ago, we went to schools throughout the Commonwealth, and we'd speak to sometimes the assembly, sometimes to the history class, and we knew we made just such a powerful point to the students, not about just the tragedy of that day, about what good has to come out of this day. And with that, with GBH and PBS, we knew we couldn't keep going this way with how hard it is to get into schools. So we partnered with, GBH and PBS and come up with a great curriculum that for the teachers, the tool is at their fingertips. For the students, it's at their fingertips. I look today, even my daughter, she was only 1 year old. There's so many kids that weren't born yet at 9/11. And the teachers weren't born at 9/11. We can't forget about this. I know an impact in my day, well, not on 9/11, but back in 1976 when I was in high school. I remember the instructor, the teacher at Catholic Memorial High School was Mr. Robinson. I was a freshman, and he showed the videos of Pearl Harbor. And then he showed the videos of Vietnam. And it still carried me through these days where I am now almost 65 years old. Through tragedies and through wars, good has to come out of it. And this is part of what we want to teach. These students go through so much difficult times in their own lives and challenges. And they're going to have tragedies in their life. And we want to make sure they come out of this and they're stronger and they can succeed through it. Again, I'm hoping that the board reviews this and hopefully, can push this into the schools. We want it, and we also have through our 9/11 fund, through the program, if any school wants to truly Zoom a family member in and talk to the history class or talk to an assembly, we're more than happy to go out. We're more than happy to Zoom in so you can put that personal touch of how that day affected you then and how it still affects us today. So I want to thank you for your time.
Hi, my name is Ken London. I'm coordinator for Massachusetts 9/11 Fund, which I should point out represents the 206 families from Massachusetts who lost a loved one on 9/11. I'm amazed when I talk to people and I mention 9/11 as part of what I'm doing, that people don't realize it's 25 years coming September, and they forget that the horrific attacks actually began in Boston, in Massachusetts. So I also want to point out that this resource, which, I remember we had a Zoom with Commissioner Martinez, you were on it, as well as former Secretary Tutwiler, and you said that you're always in favor of endorsing and supporting high caliber quality resources. Well, I hope you'll agree that we've provided this and it's free. It's free to schools. I have a question, if I may. What is the board, because we're not educators, at least in classroom educators. How does the board support an effort like this, and how can we get it into schools?
So as we had talked last year, sort of ICR role as the best thing we can do is highlight, give a platform to, and then I think Commissioner can talk about the list of high-quality curricular resources that are available on our website. But this is one of many kinds of high-quality science, English language arts, math, history, curricular that would be available if it passes the review of the board, of the department. But that process, Ken, is very important to understand because even now, the state doesn't mandate what local schools give in their curriculum. So the best we can do is sort of highlight and lift up some of the better examples of what we see out there, but I think Commissioner can.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So one, the most important thing you need to know is that 9/11 is part of, it's required in our standards, so it has to be taught in our schools. And our teachers are always looking for resources. So I think the best way, and GBH is an amazing partner, by the way, and I've said to the leader of GBH that I want to deepen the partnership because so many times it's just awareness, making sure that our teachers have access and understand that these resources are free, that they have access to them. So again, the best way for us is just to partner with you, highlight the resources. Teachers listen to us when we share with them, especially they trust that, we always look at high quality resources. And so, like I said, with the partnership we have with GBH, I never have any doubts about the quality and we saw it firsthand. So know that we're committed to deepening that partnership and definitely making sure our teachers are aware of these resources.
And we'll be doing our part, of course, marketing and promotion of the resources. We have a targeted newsletter that will go out to teachers across the nation, social studies teachers, and we also are doing a webinar in August for educators where we'll be presenting the resources ahead of the anniversary.
Any other comments or questions from board members? Mary Ann.
Thank you. I guess I just is there already accessibility and multilingual resources available on the site? I just know that there's a lot going on in terms of support, instructional support, and we've heard a lot about high quality instructional materials and sort of guiding questions and things like that. So I assume it's in there, but I just wanted to ask it.
Yes, we have, so all of the resources, we have the interactive lesson, which I showed you, which has the essential question as I highlighted, and then each of the standalone resources, the videos are presented as standalone resources. So let me show you an example here. So when you're here on this page, this is an example of what we call a standalone resource. It features a single video, the video that we just watched. So we provide teaching tips for any teacher who comes in. They can use our teaching tips. It has the essential question there to guide learning, as well as the supporting questions, historical thinking skills. We give before viewing, while viewing, after viewing questions, as well as taking it further. And then we have support materials for use with students. So in this case, the discussion questions to facilitate going a bit deeper within the classroom with students. We also provide transcripts and captions with all of our videos, so that helps with accessibility for students who may need to take a little more time to digest what they're seeing here. So that's an example of all of the support materials that we always have that sort of wrap around the media for teachers and for students.
But they're primarily in English right now?
Primarily in English. We do have some resources on
Got
PBS Learning Media that do have translations, and our goal is that we would love to be able to provide more of those. And it comes down to funding, of course.
Sure.
But yeah, something that is definitely a priority for us.
Thank you.
Can I add one other thing, please? Commissioner Martinez mentioned that you recently paid a visit to the House Chambers, I believe, and you found that it was an enlightening experience for you and the children and students. Well, every year on 9/11, there's a commemoration held at the State House. It begins with a name reading on the State House steps that begins precisely at 8:46, which is when the plane crashed. First plane crashed into the World Trade Center. And then we go into the House Chambers and we have a more formal ceremony. To that ceremony, this year we've invited 100 students from different schools throughout Massachusetts, including Hudson High School, which was mentioned as a visit for you coming up. And then after that, there's a roundtable. Pat, as a family member who lost his brother, will speak to the students about 9/11 issues. So our educational efforts go beyond what we've done with PBS. I just wanted to point that out.
Mr. Secretary?
Yeah, thank you for this presentation. As someone who was a classroom teacher on 9/11, I was in a 5th grade classroom in Massachusetts. The video evoked a lot of memories for me, and I appreciate the time and the due diligence that you've put into this. I just would say from the administration, I'm obviously new in my role, but I know there's a tremendous support for this, for the importance of this 25th anniversary and the importance of getting the message out to our students and educators. And as the commissioner said, it is part of the standards. This seems to be an excellent resource. Obviously, GBH has a reputation, and I can assure you that we'll review it per the protocols that the department has, and I can assure you that as part of the administration, we will strongly advocate for I'm glad we're having this conversation in April, right? And so there's time for us to get the word out and to make sure that because educators want these tools. I think everybody wants to make sure they do this well, and without having adequate resources, they want to make they want to make sure they have the tools to message this appropriately and sensitively to the kids. And I appreciate the opportunity to have the opportunity for individuals to come and speak to classes. I think that's really powerful, and I commend you, out of a painful moment, the ability to come forward and speak about making good from obviously a devastating moment in our country's history. So thank you very much, and look forward to partnering with you in the coming months.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you very
Thanks
much.
for coming in. Okay, and then I think, could we skip to the agenda item on the proposed amendments to regulations, just because we're going to lose some folks?
Yes, Chair. So in this, we're now going to be talking about agenda item number 4 for our community members. So this is the proposed amendments to the regulations and educator licensure and preparation program, program approval 603 CMR. So in November 2025, the board voted to solicit public comment on proposed amendments to the regulations for educator license and preparation. The revised regulations and a summary of public comment were presented to the board at the March 2026 meeting. Based on that discussion, I'm recommending that the board adopt the alternative pathway allowing eligible candidates to waive the communications and literacy skills test. I'm also recommending, based on board feedback, that this alternative pathway for the communication and literacy skills test have a 3-year implementation period and evaluation. I've charged our team to set a bold 5-year vision as part of our forthcoming agency-wide strategic plan to strengthen our educator pipeline. You'll see in this presentation how the alternative pathway is just one component of that future plan. The DESE team will now present and answer your questions. We have Clara Abbott, the Associate Commissioner of Educator Licensure Effectiveness, Brian Devine, the Director of Educator Licensure, Liz Losey, the Director of Educator and Effectiveness Policy, and as well as Lucy Wall from our legal staff.
All right. Good morning, Commissioner, Secretaries Wright, Chair Craven, and members of the board. Thank you for having us back today. My name is Claire Abbott. I am the Associate Commissioner of Educator Effectiveness, and I'm joined today by my colleagues, Liz Losey, the Director of Educator Effectiveness Policy, Brian Devine, the Director of Licensure, and Lucy Wall from our legal team. So today, we are bringing back to you for discussion and a possible vote a proposed alternative pathway to licensure, along with additional regulatory amendments. I'll start by providing a brief background and timeline, and then we will situate this proposed policy in a larger vision for building an effective teacher workforce before diving into the proposed regulatory changes themselves. We will wrap up with additional discussion and questions before moving on to a possible vote. So first, I just want to start by thanking everybody here for the care and the attention that you have already brought to this proposal. Licensure changes really do have direct consequences on our educator workforce and how teachers experience those first steps of entering a teaching career. But these policy changes are also nuanced and complex, so we really appreciate the ongoing discussion about this one. This particular policy proposal was born out of statutory requirements passed in 2024, and it emerged from a year of thoughtful engagement with the field, a robust public comment period, and discussions with you around educator preparation in general, as well as the specific role of licensure tests in promoting a diverse and effective workforce. While definitely not a silver bullet in our collective work to ensure educator quality, licensure requirements will always play a key role in setting standards for effective teaching, so we really appreciate everyone's attention to this topic. So any licensure policy is considered within the larger work of maintaining teacher quality. Here you can see a vision for an effective teacher workforce as one that is diverse, culturally responsive, well-prepared, and continuous improvement, such that all students have equitable access to effective educators. And this vision informs everything we do, from crafting licensure policy to overseeing teacher preparation programs, training, evaluation, and supports. We are working on this vision all the time across multiple levers, and the alternative licensure proposal that we're discussing today is just one piece of this larger puzzle. You can see it sort of bolded right there in the middle. It's one that we, however, believe it will make a difference for eligible teachers, particularly at the beginning of their career path. So the proposal we're discussing and voting on today is based in large part on the discussions we've been able to have with you over the last few months. And it's an alternative licensure pathway that would allow eligible educator candidates during a 3-year implementation period to waive the communications and literacy skills test. This pathway would be available for 3 years while the department studies its impact on the educator workforce and student outcomes. I will note that this pathway is specific to the communications and literacy skills test. The board's conversation and discussion in previous meetings has raised several important points, including the cost burden of a portfolio option for subject matter knowledge tests. And at this time, we believe that the CLST pathway is the most feasible and the most impactful. So why the communications and literacy skills test? As many of you know, the communications and literacy skills MTEL is one of several licensure requirements, all of which you can see here on the left. They include having a bachelor's degree, obtaining your SEI endorsement, completing an approved preparation program or route, and passing any relevant subject matter knowledge licensure tests. So zeroing in here on the communications and literacy skills test itself on the right, you can see that it's designed pretty much to do one thing, which is to measure basic communication skills, such as reading and writing. All educator candidates must take and pass the communications and literacy skills licensure test, and it generally costs around $112 per test. This pathway would allow eligible candidates to waive the CLST. And here are the 4 eligibility options to meet this waiver requirement. We strongly believe that completion of any one of these would require basic communication skills otherwise tested through the CLST and would position qualified candidates to progress through the remaining steps to achieve licensure. So the first eligibility option would be completion of a Massachusetts approved prep program. And by definition, these are rigorous programs of study or pathways approved by the department that lead to endorsement for licensure, of which basic communication skills are necessary to complete. The second is a license from another state, which would also require completion of an equivalent ed prep program and be equivalent to our own initial or professional license. The third is a graduate degree from an accredited college or university, which again would necessitate a basic level of communications and literacy skills to successfully complete. And the fourth option is 2 years of related instructional experience in a school, along with an attestation from that school or district leadership affirming the candidate's basic communications and literacy skills. Again, we believe that each of these eligibility requirements would more than represent basic communication skills, such that the CLST would be unnecessary or even a redundant requirement. So we're focusing on the communications and literacy skills test only for this pathway, and by doing so, we hope we'll be able to lower licensure costs for candidates that have already demonstrated these basic communication skills through other means, and thereby remove redundancy within the licensure process while maintaining high standards for licensure and employment. The individuals who will benefit from this pathway will also likely check many boxes relative to our vision for a more diverse and effective workforce. For example, we know that many people with 2 or more years of instructional experience are those already employed as paraprofessionals, educators on emergency licenses, and those on a waiver. These groups tend to be more racially and ethnically diverse, and they tend to be disproportionately employed in some of our highest needs roles, such as special education and ESL. And they also tend to work in some of our most struggling districts. Removing this one licensure requirement will not only acknowledge their prior instructional experience, but it will facilitate their obtaining full licensure even faster. Career changers will also benefit from this policy, as many will be able to leverage existing graduate degrees to waive the communications and literacy requirement, as will folks moving to Massachusetts from out of state who already have a teaching license. Again, this is only one requirement for licensure, and removing it is what you might call low-hanging fruit, as they are more than likely having demonstrated these basic communication skills already. This is also what we will be studying, the extent to which this licensure pathway has an impact on the diversity and quality of our workforce, which brings me to the next piece of the regulatory proposal. So as part of this proposed pathway, we are also recommending a 3-year implementation period and concurrent evaluation with annual reporting to the board on progress and impact. This 3-year evaluation will mirror the evaluation conducted of the alternative licensure assessments, which concluded last year and resulted in the decision by this board to make alternative licensure assessments permanent. And through this evaluation, we will study who is accessing the alternative licensure pathway and through which eligibility route, how this is impacting rates of licensure and employment, as well as participants' effectiveness on academic and non-academic outcomes for students. These will be the metrics we will report on back to you each year. At the end of the 3-year implementation period, and no later than June 30th, 2029, you as a board will have to take action to continue the alternative licensure pathway or allow it to be discontinued. In a nutshell, this implementation period, evaluation, and sunset provision will function as a pilot. So here's the timeline for all of this, and the good news is that we are prepared to make this pathway available almost immediately. If approved, it will come at no cost to candidates. Eligible candidates will be able to apply for a COMLIT waiver in ELAR within a couple of weeks, and we are also ready to post an RFR for an independent evaluator and anticipate onboarding them as early as July. Our first report to the board will be next spring, and that will likely focus on implementation and participation rates. The second report will be presented in the spring of 2028, likely with a focus on licensure and employment rates. And the final report will be presented in early spring of 2029 with early results on teacher quality and student outcomes. The board would then be required to vote on continuing the policy by June of 2029. Throughout this entire period, I want to underscore, we will be actively promoting all licensure routes, from the CLST pathway to the growing number of alternative licensure assessments, many of which are in our subject matter knowledge licensure portfolio. And again, this is just one piece of a larger set of licensure employment initiatives designed to expand, diversify, and strengthen the educator workforce. Last but not least, while we have understandably been focused on the alternative licensure pathway provision in these proposed regulatory amendments, I do want to call your attention to some additional technical amendments that are part of this package, which we have reviewed in earlier meetings. And they include some smaller amendments to facilitate equitable implementation of this pathway, as well as some non-substantive additional updates to language. And that concludes our presentation. I look forward to additional questions, discussions. Turn it back over to you, Commissioner.
Thank you, Dr. West.
Thank you for the presentation, and I just wanted to say thank you for being so responsive to the issue that I had raised around the pilot and evaluation strategy. I think that makes me feel a lot better about moving forward. I also appreciate the decision to focus in on the COMLIT pathway first and separating it out from the subject matter competence, which I think does raise some both practical and substantive issues that we shouldn't rush through. So I think this is great. My one question is, if we adopt this, who, if anyone, will still take the COMLIT test? And should we worry about it may just go away, as I understand it?
There's actually a significant portion of candidates who will still need to take the communications and literacy test. So anybody pursuing their provisional license that doesn't meet any of those requirements, they would still have to pass.
So
the
if they haven't done
communications
an educator prep
correct.
program.
And we have a significant number of educators on provisional licenses.
That's right. Okay. Thank you. That's helpful.
Yeah.
Any other questions? And I actually would ask for a motion on so that we can, in the interest of time, get this out there, and then we can discuss as the motion's on the table. Do I have a motion for the regulatory change in a second?
Well, second.
So now the matter is on the table, and I think, did Christina or Kristen? Christina, please.
Yeah. First, thanks to the team for the responsiveness and the follow through. I still will maintain that we have strong licensure processes in this Commonwealth, and should keep them. But wonder, somewhat to Dr. West's question, do we know how many of the teachers who are on emergency licenses will be immediately helped in this process? Like, is that a one-to-one number, or are they on emergency licenses for some other reason than this exam?
So we know roughly the percentage of educators who are working on a waiver who might be eligible. And I'll answer the question about emergency licenses as well, but I just want to, right now we have 3,100 people working on a waiver in Massachusetts public schools. And is it 40%? I have the wrong, 41% of them have not met the COMLIT requirement yet. Now that could mean they've taken it and not passed it. That could mean they haven't even attempted it yet. But 41% of educators on a waiver would theoretically be eligible for this pathway.
Okay.
With regard to emergency licensed teachers, we have 1,900 currently working in public schools on an emergency license. We don't know how many of them fall into that similar category of having not completed their communications and literacy skills requirement. But we do know that over 30% of them identify as people of color, and the majority of them are in high needs roles in high needs districts. So we believe this would have a pretty significant and relatively immediate impact on getting these folks that much closer to full licensure.
And I guess it's my offering to the commissioner, which we've spoken about before. It would be exciting to see what the overall vision is for teacher quality in the Commonwealth. So would we achieve a day where we're thinking beyond licensure and thinking to solve a bigger question? Like, what do we want our teachers to know, do, and display for our students? And what's the best pathway to ensure that they can do that? We are actually well regarded for our licensure processes. and yet we still have individuals in our classrooms that aren't able to get through those processes. And I will remain concerned about what that means in terms of the quality of education that they're providing our students. But I'm grateful to the team for hearing the feedback. Very happy that we're not discussing subject matter tests, and look forward to continuing the conversation.
And to your point, board member, I think this is a bigger conversation about what our vision is for student impact and how do we help teachers get there. And I agree with you, licensure is one component. The support for teachers and training is another. Making, again, the part of the challenge right now, as much as we invest in our state, because we don't target those investments and we don't have really high expectations, we send mixed messages to our teachers, frankly. And I say this to our superintendents, and I say this to many stakeholders, let's please stop confusing our teachers and parents about what high expectations are and what impact means. And so I think that's something that we're going to continue to push, as well as we see this as a redundancy, as long as our candidates are in one of those 4 pathways. And frankly, we'd rather they focus on their content areas, which are much more rigorous. And I really appreciate how protective the board of that. I'd rather they focus on those areas, and we support them in those areas, working with our colleges of education, which I think we also have a huge opportunity there, because as I speak to different deans, there's different levels of supports across our Commonwealth, and I think there's so many opportunities. So happy to continue this discussion, board member, about really making sure we articulate our vision for what we want how we are going to define our high quality teachers, but also I also want to continue to push around also how we support those teachers, because we know that the work is just really hard, and we want to make sure those supports are there for them as well.
Yeah, I mean, we want quality teachers so that they can have impact on student achievement. Like, it's all to that through line. And so I know I can't ask the holy grail question of, will this report tell me the impact that they're having directly in the classroom? But we don't want teachers just for teachers' sake. We want to make sure that they're equipped and trained and ready to have impact in the lives of students. And that can be measured in a ton of ways. And so that's the push that I would love for us to be future forward thinking as we engage in this conversation. Like, I think licensure is the floor. It's not the ceiling of what we could prepare our teachers to have access to, etc.
Yeah, well said.
Okay, any other comments, questions? So we can take a vote. We have a roll call vote that's required because we have some remote members.
Okay, thank you. I'm going to go in alphabetical order. Member Chamberlain? Thank you. Member Fisher?
Yes.
Member Grant?
Yes.
Member Hausha?
Yes.
Member Smitty?
Yes.
Member Stewart?
Yes.
Member West?
Yes.
Chair Craven?
Yes.
Secretary Reich?
Yes.
And Vice Chair Hill. Sorry, you were out of order.
That's okay.
Vice Chair Hill.
Yes.
Thank you. Unanimous vote. The motion passes.
Thank you. Thanks to the team, Desi.
Chair,
Thanks, Marty.
Thank you, Marty.
Chair, while I'm sitting here, I wonder if we could vote on the
The
minutes.
minutes.
Is that okay?
Yes, do I have a motion on the minutes from the last meeting?
Motion.
All in favor? Roll call. Can you take Dr. West first?
Sure, Dr. West. All right, wonderful. Member Chamberlain?
Yes.
Member Fisher?
Yes.
Member Grant?
Yes.
Member Hausha?
Yes.
Member Smitty?
Kristen.
Thank you.
Yes.
Chair Craven?
Yes.
Secretary's right?
Abstain.
Very good. And Vice Chair Hills?
Yes.
Sorry, Member Stewart?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay, great. And our update on the Safe Schools program for LGBTQ students.
Yes, Chair. So the Safe Schools program for LGBTQ students is a collaborative effort between DESE and the Massachusetts Commission of LGBTQ Youth. The program advances DESE's educational vision, promoting safe and supportive promoting a safe and supportive school environment where all students and families have a sense of belonging. The department and the commission continue their longstanding partnership and commitment to this work and sharing updates with the board approximately every 2 years. I would like to invite to the table leaders from DESE, the Commission on LGBTQ Youth, and the Safe Schools Program to provide us with an update on the program's work. Welcome, everyone, and thank you for the partnership.
It's still morning. So good morning. Thank you, Commissioner Martinez. Good morning, Secretary, board leaders, and members. I am Rochelle Engler-Bennett, Associate Commissioner of Student and Family Support, and I use she, her pronouns. And it is my pleasure to introduce you to today's speakers, who include alphabetically two from the Commission on LGBTQ Youth, Shapley Brooks, Executive Director, and perhaps you can need to raise your hand when I say your name. Excellent. And Gary Barboa-Reese, who is the Superintendent Association's representative on the commission and an assistant superintendent in the North Middlesex Regional School District. We have two of DESE's senior associate commissioners, Darcy Fernandez from Specialized Supports and Erin Hashimoto Martel from Teaching and Learning. And we have two from our Safe Schools program for LGBTQ students, Gabriel Rivas Orellana, Youth Programs Coordinator, and Jason Wheeler, Director. I'd also like to thank all of those from our broader teams who helped make this work possible and give an extra shout out to a few who are in the room, Landon Callahan and Deandra Woom from the Safe Schools program, and Kristen McKinnon from the Student and Family Support Office. Collectively, we will be providing you with a brief overview of the Safe Schools program and the roles of the commission and department. We will share some information about the current needs for the program, including district and students' perspectives and the importance of inclusive teaching and learning. We will then wrap things up with some key points and looking ahead. One of the strengths of the Safe Schools program is that it is a collaborative effort between the department and the Commission on LGBTQ Youth, drawing upon the resources and perspectives of both organizations and supported by a memorandum of understanding. The program staff are hired and guided by the Commission, thanks to a Department of Public Health state line item. And the program is considered part of DESE's Student and Family Support Office team and helps inform work across department units and initiatives. This work helps advance DESE's goals. For example, DESE's power of presence, attendance, and engagement priority, and our educational vision, in which all students excel in affirming environments where students feel like they belong. So I'm grateful for the partnership of the Commission leadership, and I will turn it now to Executive Director Brooks.
Thank you, Rochelle. Good morning. Again, my name is Shapley Brooks, and I just wanted to give you just a little bit of insight of what's happening right now, what we're seeing on the ground. We're living in a complex and rapidly shifting times for LGBTQ students and families and educators across the Commonwealth. This is especially true for transgender and non-binary students who are navigating disaffirming exposure instead of visibility, which increases their vulnerability. We are seeing anti-LGBTQ activity in every single district in our very liberal state. And how we respond to this hatred at this point is critical and is deeply personal for young people in our schools. Student voice consistently highlights the clear and urgent direction for our work. Throughout various communities and regions, students are experiencing heightened anxiety and other mental health challenges directly linked to both national and local bullying and harassment. These harmful behaviors significantly increase their risk for the most serious outcomes, which include but are not limited to interactions with the child welfare and criminal justice systems and mental health disparities. LGBTQ+ youth are 3 times more likely to think about suicide and 4.4 times more likely to attempt suicide than their cisgender heterosexual peers. While we're continuing to mull through the data, the YRBS data for our 2027 annual report, which will be released May 28th, we assure you that the numbers are not cautionary, but they are very real consequences of what's happening in our schools and in our community. It's essential that students feel safe, affirmed, and visible within their school environments. And so many are navigating multiple intersecting and interwoven identities, and their experiences can differ greatly depending on their location within Massachusetts. And we recognize and address that these varied experiences are crucial to ensuring that every student receives the support they need. At the same time, our schools are operating in a rapidly evolving landscape. National dynamics are no longer distant, as I said. They are showing up in our classrooms, and our policies, and our school communities. And this creates a heightened need for clarity, consistency, direction, and leadership at every level. Our shared responsibility goes beyond drafting and approving policies. It's essential that these policies become active, meaningful practices that directly benefit students every day to create safer and more affirming school environments. The Commission does this through our collaboration with DESE through the Safe Schools program and our Leadership Council. And this program has become a life-saving resource for students in Massachusetts. And with that, I will pass it to our Director of the Safe Schools program, Jason Wheeler, to tell us more about the work.
Great. Hi, everybody. Good morning. Once again, my name is Jason. I'm the Director for the Safe Schools program for LGBTQ students. I use he and him for pronouns. I want to start by grounding us in the work of the program and tell you a little bit about what it actually looks like. We organize the work around 3 core areas. First, training and technical assistance. We directly support educators, school leaders, district teams to build their knowledge, strengthen their skills, and respond to both foundational and emerging needs within the schools and districts. Over the past year, we've seen a significant increase in requests for this type of support as districts are bringing forward more complex and evolving questions related to student safety, inclusion, and implementation. Just to give you a sense of the scale, this year alone, we're on track to complete just over 120 professional development interventions or trainings in schools and respond to a little over 200 requests for technical assistance. Second sort of body of work for us is the student leadership development. Through the LGBTQ Student Leadership Council, we create opportunities for students to build their leadership skills, to take action to improve their school communities, and to inform the work that we are doing through their lived experience. We host over 25 student leadership gatherings each year, including a multi-day skill building summit that happens over the summer. The third body of work is our policy implementation support. We work with schools and districts not just to understand guidance, but more so to help them to understand what it actually looks like to put this guidance into practice, especially as they're thinking about how to meaningfully protect and affirm LGBTQ students and all students in their schools and districts. Districts are doing really thoughtful work in this particular space. We're seeing things like deepening family engagement practices, stronger attention to curriculum alignment and representation, and we're seeing more intentional ways of bringing both students and families into conversations in ways that truly reflect their communities. And that matters because what we know is that this work is really about building trust and strengthening partnerships in support of student well-being. As we know, LGBTQ students and their families are not one size fits all. The needs across communities are different, and our approach has to reflect that. At the end of the day, the goal is really clear for us, right? This is about making schools places where students, families, and staff experience safety, belonging, and are able to be supported in their success in our school systems. I want to talk a little bit about the current context, and Chapley already mentioned some of this, or a lot of this, right? At the same time, the broader context for this work is continuing to shift, right? Schools are navigating a more complex landscape, both in their school climate, but also in the expectations that are placed on educators and school leaders. Part of that is responding to the rapidly evolving national landscape, where particularly transgender and non-binary students are facing increased scrutiny and challenges that are showing up in their day-to-day experiences in schools. We're seeing that complexity show up in the kinds of questions and the requests that we're receiving from districts. They're not asking what the policies say. They're asking how to apply these practices, right, in their schools, how to meaningfully protect and affirm students, and how to engage families in ways that build trust and shared understanding, right? The data reinforces this. Approximately 1 in 4 high school students in Massachusetts who responded to the YRBS survey identify as LGBTQ. We continue to see persistent disparities, as was said earlier, in areas such as safety, mental health, and belonging. So what this points to for us is a real need to continue to strengthen staff capacity in our schools. Educators, school teams need the tools, the confidence, and the supports to be able to respond in consistent ways. It also points to the importance of deeper family partnership, including things like we're now seeing family advisory councils popping up in districts around the Commonwealth, and these are spaces to create dialogue and shared responsibility for supporting students. So it's clear that the need is here, right? And also, there's a real opportunity for us to continue to strengthen school communities and reinforcing belonging for students. I'd like to turn it over to Assistant Superintendent Balboa Reese here to share a bit about what our district leaders are telling us that they need and want.
Thank you. Good morning, everyone. So earlier this month, the Commission hosted a listening session for our school superintendents. This was attended by superintendents, other district leaders representing districts throughout Massachusetts, both rural, urban, and suburban. And while some of the topics that Chapley brought up in terms of some of the challenges and concerns, it was also promising to hear some of the positive things that school district leaders were identifying, which included just an appreciation for the strong state policies that are grounded in helping students to feel a sense of belonging. And when that happens, what we're able to do at the district level is really create local policies that are in alignment with that and better support our students. It helps give us clarity, and it helps provide a stability for our school districts. Another area that school leaders identified was a strong school culture, and really identifying that students are now leading the charge around inclusion with empathy and acceptance. This elevation of student voice really is in alignment with DESE's educational vision of elevating student voice, providing students the opportunity to take their leadership. And school leaders are able to do this in part because what's being guided and directed and supported through the state level, we're able to create safe and supportive environments where students are able to step up and take those leadership opportunities. Another area that really was highlighted across all superintendents was the Safe Schools program. And in 2 parts for that. First, just the aspect of the professional development, opportunities to be proactive and look at how do we set up the structures within our schools to have students feel safe, have students feel like they belong, and have students feel like they can advocate. But secondly, as Jason had reported, we're also seeing a number of students reporting an appreciation of just the technical assistance and that opportunity to reach out and get clarification from the state around just topics and how to navigate some of the challenging situations that we're facing within our districts. Specific to the Safe Schools program, I think the three things that came up across the board in terms of what's working is just at the state level, clear messaging that's aligned with inclusive values. We see that in the educational vision. We see that in resources and documents that the state provides to support districts, even if it's just looking at curriculum and how do we elevate student voice and how do we make sure that all students are represented and feel like they belong. A strong foundation in Massachusetts just in terms of the laws and the practices and support of students, and then the Safe Schools program. The area that we continue to look for support from the state is just as we're trying to navigate changes at the federal level, as we're trying to navigate changes at the state level, just continued guidance and support, timely guidance and support around understanding, around interpreting different policies and regulations that are coming up, what the legal implications are for districts as we try to navigate these topics with students and with families and with the community, navigating funding risks that are associated with different federal actions. And most importantly, I think that the one thing that came up pretty consistently was just the need for reassurance from the state that districts won't be left alone to navigate these challenging situations as we move forward.
Good morning. Thank you for the opportunity to share. I'm Gabriel Rivas Orellana. I'm the Youth Program Coordinator for Safe Schools Program. In the heart of my work is being in direct relationship with students across the state through our Student Leadership Council, listening sessions, GSAs, and school communities. I also want to name something. This is the first time we have come before this body to uplift student voices without a student speaker present. That decision reflects the real risk that visibility can carry for historically marginalized students in the current national climate, where policies and rhetoric have increased fear for many young people. Everything I'm about to share comes directly from the students. These are consistent themes across different identities and experiences, and what students are telling us is this. Their experience varies dramatically depending on which classroom they're in or which adult is present. Students deserve an affirming environment throughout their school day, not just in certain spaces. When a student's name and pronouns are respected in one classroom and ignored in the next, that inconsistency affects their ability to show up, engage, and learn. Some students also name that adults make the difference. They notice both action and inaction. A student shared something that has stayed with me, that staying neutral is an active choice. They weren't just talking about their peers, they were talking about the adults too. And I think that that's something worth sitting with, especially when we know that some adults who care can feel stuck, not because they don't want to support students, but because the systems haven't always made it clear or safe to do so. Students feel the impact of that either way. Students also spoke about visibility and representation. They want to see themselves reflected in curriculum, school spaces, and in leadership. One student shared that LGBTQ+ students of color are navigating layers of erasure that aren't always visible to everyone. Even in spaces that are meant to be safe, not everyone experiences that way. Visibility isn't just about a flag or a sticker, it's about whether a student can walk into a space and feel like they belong. And right now, for many students, that's not what's happening. These are the daily lived experiences in classrooms across Massachusetts, and they connect directly to how learning environments are structured and to why curriculum and instruction are central to this conversation. And with that, I'll turn it on to Erin.
Great, thank you so much. Good morning, everyone. Erin Hashimoto Martel. I'm the Senior Associate Commissioner of the Teaching and Learning Unit here at the department. And really what I'm here to kind of affirm this morning is that inclusive curriculum, which has been stated as kind of a need and essential for student experiences at schools. This is how we define what high quality standards aligned instruction is it's inclusive. It's not something extra, it's not something that's nice to have, and it's also not narrowed to a specific time or place. It's fully embedded and coherent across the student's experience. It's stated in our regulations that curricula must encourage respect for human and civil rights of all individuals, regardless of race, color, sex, gender identity, religion, national origin, or sexual orientation. That's the baseline minimum.
As it was discussed earlier this morning, and many are familiar with our Curate process for reviewing year-long course instructional materials, I just wanted to elevate a couple places where those highlight the expectations around inclusive curriculum. So as Elizabeth Metz, our recent Milken Award winner, stated, she's part of the panel for history and social science curricular reviews as part of Curate. So that one specifically has an indicator that looks at how, within instructional materials, how identity and social position shape people's perceptions of events and encourage honest and informed discussions about power, prejudice, and oppression. We're specifically looking to see that materials are doing this and providing these opportunities for students in their classrooms. Related in ELA, which is often a hot topic here at our board meetings, in our K-5 ELA rubric, we are also reviewing the extent to which materials include texts that are representing various cultures and perspectives, where student identities, all their identities, are reflected in the curriculum themselves, but also expose them to others in very nuanced and multidimensional ways across the entire course. So ultimately, inclusive materials strengthen student engagement, belonging, and academic success now in today, but also support our educational vision of students valuing themselves and others as they shape their path and engage with the world into the future. Thank you. Back to Chapley, I think.
I think it's actually back to me.
Oh,
yep, I'm doing just some quick takeaways, right? Forgive me, sorry. This is the joy of having a wealth of people up here. So I want to share just a few takeaways before passing it back to Chapley and then Darcy. First, we can't not acknowledge the national landscape, right? And the shifting that's happening, that schools are really feeling the impact in real time. And this requires us to stay informed, to stay responsive, to stay grounded in our responsibility to students. Second, I think that it's important or critical for us to ensure that students' experiences must remain at the center of all of our work, that policies, practices, and decisions should always come back to how students are experiencing school each day. And then finally, the districts are asking for clarity, consistency, and support, and that this is an opportunity for us to be able to model and support school districts by being clear about our expectations related to student safety, inclusive learning environments, and continuing to build community and capacity across the state.
I just wanted to stress the importance of our collaboration. It has been incredibly important to our young people. We've done a lot of great work together. We recently had our an event with the #1 most banned book in America, right? And we were able to have Erin there with us, and so that just highlights some of the really good work that we're still doing together to make sure that young people see DESE and see the commission working together to make sure that these environments are safe for them. And so, like Jason said, it's both of our responsibilities, right? To make sure young people can see us, and when I say see us, I mean as entities, see us present, and know that we're fighting for them. And so I just want to thank you all, thank you, Rochelle, and thank you everyone here who has contributed to the success of the program, and who continues to pour into the vision that we have for young people in the Commonwealth. And I'll pass it to Darcy to close this out.
Thank you all very much. I want to begin by thanking the Commissioner for appointing me to oversee some of this work. I will say to you before I close that this is very important to me. As a middle school teacher, I had a young gentleman who saw himself as part of the LGBTQ community. And unfortunately, because he did not have enough support, he ended up committing suicide. So for me, this is extremely, extremely important. I vowed that day that I would not be in a situation where I didn't do something to help. Him and I had a great relationship, but unfortunately, he couldn't find that anywhere else. So as we close today, I want to take a minute, first of all, to thank the Commission and the Safe in Schools program team for the continued hard work in representing LGBTQ students. And I also want to thank the teaching and learning team, who has really been out front in helping to get that curriculum up and running in a way that represents all people. I want to remind the board that about one in every 4 students is identified as LGBTQ. I think sometimes we forget that, and we forget that when we look in a classroom, we see every 4th student is within this category. We need to really pay closer attention to this community and ensure they feel safe and belonged and academically successful in their schools. They've talked about this today. In the youth, what they are looking for is the ability to have a space where their persistent challenges are dealt with, such as mental health, dealing and connecting with their families, having the schools appreciate them, and also being in a legal domain where they are accepted and we're pushing those agendas. Lastly, we have to ensure that there are affirming communities for these students. They cannot afford to go to school every day and feel as though they are an outsider. It is just much their school as it is anyone else's. So when I end today, know and understand that the work that this team is doing is helping these students to thrive and to, I hate to use this word, but also survive. We want to get beyond that. We want to get to a place where all our students, and I mean every student, feel safe and supportive in schools. So thank you all for your hard work. Appreciate it.
And thank you for this presentation. I think Mary Ann Stewart and I remember, and I want to give a shout out to Jeff Parati, wherever he is out there, because he really led the way for a lot of this work for a long time for the department. And I've just been so impressed by the evolution to where you are today. So thank you for this presentation. And are there any comments or questions from board members continuing to do the work that you're doing? Mary Ann.
Yeah, thank you so much. It's great always to hear from you all. Thank you for everything that you're doing. And I have to imagine that there are gaps in so many places, and it's just, I have to, I have a lot of questions actually, but I guess where are the gaps? How do you use the data to inform beyond an individual teacher so that all staff, are, and this is an ongoing thing. So, and like you keep saying, it's a national landscape that's coming into districts, so it's got to be very complicated. I was on a school committee in a high-performing district, and I know what it's like when you have an engaged parent community that has all the answers or has a lot of questions and wants to, drive home a certain outcome or something. So anyway, I'm really looking forward to hearing more about some of these issues too. And maybe that's Gary and Jason and some of the others too.
So I think one of the things when we talk about gaps is not to make assumptions about what the gaps are. I think oftentimes as educators, we think we know what the issue is, but if we don't ask the students and really elevate their voices, we're not targeting the right problem. So that's what we're trying to really do, and we're seeing more and more across the state, is really giving those opportunities, creating those spaces where students feel comfortable and safe to share, and really then asking them the questions about where the gaps are and how we can address them.
And so what are you hearing? I mean, what are the students saying?
So I'll give an example, for my district specifically. A couple years ago, we, one of the students as part of their civics action project had wanted to do a survey around student safety and sense of belonging within the LGBT community in the school setting. And it was fascinating for us because as much as we thought we were creating a safe space for our students, 90% of the students who identified as LGBTQ said they didn't feel it was safe. 90% of the students who did not identify as LGBTQ said it's a very safe space for our students. So I think that disparity was very telling for us and really was an eye-opener and a lesson for us to to go back and make sure we're getting the student voice and then bringing them into the fold for the conversation. If we're not bringing the right people to the table, then we're missing what we should be targeting.
Go
Please.
Oh, sorry. One of the sort of like needs that was named was the need for support around clear message around the rapidly evolving, climate, political climate change that we're in. So my question is around the support around that area. Are we seeing that we're getting the guidance and clear message is equitably across the state, or are there areas where you see that the guidance and support is not necessarily reaching as fast, and is there correlation to where we see the higher needs of bullying and self-harming and all of that? Sorry, complex question.
Sure. So forgive me, this is a little bit of an unformed thought in advance. So I think that one of the areas where we're seeing a gap, and I think it's also related to this particular question, is that yes, there is on a statewide level a clear messaging around the laws that are guiding this particular work, and that all students deserve a safe and supportive learning environment free of bias-based behavior. That is clear. I think one of the things that the national climate is cultivating in our schools is that folks are much less public about the way they are talking about how this inclusion shows up in schools. And that is speaking volumes to students, right? Because they're no longer hearing it from their school leaders or district leaders or even classroom teachers, because there's a fear factor that's happening, that's at play right now. Very understandably, right? Very understandably. And I think that what that's doing is it's pushing our educators to be more intentional about their one-on-one support of students and that affirmation, but it's not across the board. It's not being modeled for other students. It's not really intentionally part of how we're teaching students right now. And I think that's a huge issue in this moment.
Yeah, and lack of capacity, right? So I have a follow-up question. So it was great to see that 60% of you students can talk to a parent or caregiver, and I'm also wondering what is the role of guidance counselor? We're seeing that the support is. Are students able to talk to their guidance counselors, find support in school, not just at home? And going back to the capacity issue, how have we seen a shift? And
Yeah, I think so. That particular statistic is about students being able to speak to a trusted adult about something that's important to them.
Okay.
It's not always about talking about their LGBTQ identities, if you will. And so I think one of the areas that we are focusing on as a program is how do we build the capacity of student support teams to be able to engage with families to bring forward conversations related to sexual orientation and gender identity. I think there's sometimes a gap around our adults who are supporting students and families to be able to talk specifically about this component of their identity. There may be competency in in many other areas, right? But this tends to be one area where there's a lot of professional development that still needs to be supported for our student facing support teams. Would you add anything to that?
Yeah, I think that's where I think a lot of school districts are reaching out for technical assistance, is how to navigate those conversations with students, how to help students develop the skills to be able to have conversations with their family and feel comfortable and safe having those conversations. And what we're seeing, at least from our communications with superintendents, is we're reaching out a lot for the technical assistance when it's happening. We also need to start to be more proactive and look at those professional development opportunities to help develop the adults' skills in the building to support students around navigating those conversations.
May I add one more thing? I think the commissioner has it right when he talks about data said to us, he really wants us to disaggregate in this particular category as well, which is really going to help us to get a sense of how many students in Massachusetts who are in the LGBT community are actually meeting with success academically. And if we do that, what that's going to promote is exactly what Jason is talking about, teams getting up and running and saying, what are we going to do to support these students? And it's also going to help with the leaders in our communities, because ultimately with that data in front of them, it is going to be more difficult for them to kind of say, this is not important. So I really commend the commissioner at this point for pushing us to make sure we're looking at the data in that way and formulating more support for these students.
Okay, thank you. I have one final question, but I want to make space for others before I can ask the question.
Any other questions before Dalida asks her question?
I also have a
Okay.
Oh, go for it.
But
Go
I,
for
okay, well, so I want to understand, what is our district-wide strategy for mandating all staff, for professional development and, so that they're able to address this more continuously and continue to improve?
That's more like a commissioner question?
Yeah.
Whatever, I mean, it's got to be implemented somewhere, no?
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean,
Do we
I
have a
think,
strategy in
again,
there,
team, correct me if I'm wrong, because again, I'm still new, and I'll keep saying that at least until I finish my first year. We can't mandate, particular professional development, but what we are doing, and again, thank you for this partnership, is providing the support. I think the challenge is how do you do it at scale, because we know our biggest enemy is variance, right? We just have a significant variance across the state. And as Darcy said, I really am asking the team, let's really understand where, again, where the data is telling us, where we're seeing incidents, how do we push in? I think the dream would be, board members, would be for us to be more proactive. I will say, I just want to emphasize the point, from doing this work for more than 20 years, this point about student voice is so critical. So many of our educators really do feel like they're doing the right things and they're saying the right things and creating the right conditions. But it's amazing when they start talking to students, including at the elementary level, they find out that, there was something that was, misaligned, right? And unintentionally, but I think us elevating student voice, I know Isabella, this is part of your work that you've been doing as well all year, really elevating student voice, especially in these kind of areas, is just so critical. So again, I appreciate how the commission and DESE work together, but it is something, board members, it is a challenge around how do we go from reactiveness to proactiveness? And board chair, this is not only in this area, but in other areas, right? Of anti-hate is always going to be one of our challenges. And this is, again, I'm sorry to be harping on this. This is the reason why we need to have targeted resources and targeted assistance, where we can really, really be able to not only provide the support, but also, provide the impact and and again, eventually get to the proactive side instead of just being reactive.
My question was around the technical assistant. Just wondering in terms of language capacity.
Yes. So one of the things that we recognize with regard to our technical assistants, and I think it's language capacity and beyond, right?
Yes.
Is that we have a particular skill set among our team. We're very good about accessing that skill set, and we know that given the identities that we are holding as collectively, that we may not be the right people to be addressing technical assistance requests from specific schools, which is why we rely on a body of LGBTQ organizations throughout the Commonwealth to be able to address language access, cultural differences, faith-based questions that might come up. All of those other issues, we're really connected to a number of different organizations that can help us respond to those and are interested in responding to those. But it also, I think it started with us being really conscious of the fact that we hold particular identities and skill sets, and there are others that we don't.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would like to add to that. The commission, we've really focused on making sure that we're looking at the most marginalized person in the room, and then all of our work kind of centers around that. So we're looking at immigration, we're looking at neurodivergence, we're looking at all at the same time. And so it's really important that anything that we do to address the issues felt and seen by LGBTQ youth includes them as a whole person. And so I think that it's really important to note that oftentimes we talk about LGBTQ identity and race, right? But we don't talk about what that looks like together, and those with those intersectional identities, how they're showing up. So a young person can go into an LGBTQ space as a young Black trans girl and still feel out of place. And so we're making sure that when she walks into that room, she feels safe, if that makes sense.
Yeah, thank you.
Well, thank you very much for all your work, for your partnership with us, and for being here continually every 2 years to show us the progress that's being made. And I understand there are challenges, but, Kristen, before I wrap up, Kristen.
Yeah, I just wanted to say quickly, I wanted just to commend the work that this commission is doing. As a super and as a principal, I used the professional development provided, and it was especially meaningful because students were brought into that PD for staff and for administrators. And I want to echo Commissioner Martinez's request around making sure that there's targeted support that is continued to provide for these types of supports for districts, because each situation is so nuanced and specific as just described. And so I think that if we can elevate the need and the impact that this organization is having, or this, branch is having on districts across the state, I think it would do all of our students well. So thank you for all the work you're doing.
Thanks, Kristen. Christina?
I'll be super quick. I wanted to thank you all as well. And this circles back to my my remarks around overall teacher quality. So what is our role in making sure that educators in the Commonwealth are trained, equipped, and ready to meet all of our students where they are? One of the highest rates of students that took their lives during the pandemic were students that identified as members of the LGBTQ plus community because they didn't have safe spaces. And so when I talk about teacher quality or teacher preparedness, it's more than just content knowledge. It's hard to hear that we can't mandate these types of offerings to our educators because students are going through all sorts of identity shifts and understandings while they're in our classrooms. And so I applaud your work, and also really would love to know how do we do more to make sure that our students don't feel just safe, but they feel seen and valued inside our schools.
Thank you, Christina. So thank you very much, and I wish that those folks were here because we really want to give you applause for what you've been doing for many years and building on the success of prior commissions, but just seeing you here today has been very moving for all of us, and we're here to support you in your work. So thank you.
Thank you.
And so, do I have a motion to adjourn because the board will reconvene for its next regular meeting on May 19th, which is a Tuesday at Hudson High School, where Isabella will be hosting us. Thank you, in a second. Thanks.